falling towers, streets in flames, forgotten heroes, who knows their names? Broken future, shattered dreams.
It's muted. Hello, friends. This is Sam Cheney reporting for Weaponized News today, February 20th, 2025. I see Barry over there in the chats. Thank you, Barry, for being our hype man. Yeah, push the likes and subscribes for us. Thank you. And Barry, let's do chemtrails next week. I got another great documentary lined up, Beyond Treason, for everybody after the news here. And yeah, let's try to get together the chemtrail geoengineering stratospheric aerosol spraying next week. But thank you, Barry, for all of your efforts helping myself and Weaponized News. We'll have Thomas from Alpha Mega Energy on again tomorrow, and then we have one guest confirmed next week. Trying to get some more lined up. So we march forward here. What do we got in the news today? Patel finally gets the votes to be confirmed as FBI director. Government's laying off a lot of people. What are all these people going to do for work? I don't know. All kind of government agencies are laying off people. They're going to be replaced by AI. What are these government workers to do? I don't know. You should have never worked for the government in the first place. I don't have much sympathy for you. Sorry to tell you. Taxation's theft. Tired of being stolen from. Tired of being extorted by this government, as I'm sure everybody else is. There are protests, though. I don't know who. I guess Democrats, lefties. I don't know who they are. Maybe they're federal plants, for all we know. I'd say the large majority are led by the feds of these idiotic protests. They're literally protesting pro-corruption, right? So, I don't know. Should we start a campaign? We're the pro-corruption party, and we're going to protest your being against corruption. I guess radical left-wingers. I don't know. Maybe radical right-wingers. I don't know. Probably just feds will be part of that party. I don't know. But that's going on in the background of all this. DOGE and government downsizing. I don't know if we're going to like what is on the other end of it. Telling you. But what do we do? It's like our hands were tied. The government corrupt, out of control, doing tyranny on us. What do? Leave them in place? Patel better start arresting people like yesterday. So just unlimited fraud, unlimited money laundering, unlimited tyranny, violation of all of our rights. Still no one gets in trouble. What the F is going on here? Well, I'm from the government. I'm allowed to be a tyrannical thief. You're not. I'm sorry, you're not. Nowhere does it say that because you work for the government, you're allowed to be a criminal and violate our constitutional rights, civil rights, human rights, violate our natural rights. Because you work for the government, you're actually lower, if our system was working correctly, than the average citizen. The only reason you have a job is to protect our natural rights. And all they do is abuse them and come up with schemes to extort us for more money. We better see mass arrests, damn it. I won't hold out hope, though, honestly. Remember Q told us, oh, they already arrested all the bad guys, and they've already all been had secret military tribunals, and they've all been executed at Guantanamo Bay. And all these idiot QAnons were cheering it on. And I was like, if any of this is true, which I never believed it was, but even if it was all true, do you realize that that is tyranny? You have to arrest them, give them a public trial with a jury of their peers and so on. And then, hey, maybe they're found not guilty by a jury of their peers or whatever. They deserve due process, as everyone does. You can't just grab people and go take them to a secret black site and execute them, because that can happen to you next. Like, and these people just can't wrap their mind around basic due process, what the hell our country's supposed to be about. But anyway, arrest them, charge them, arrest them, give them a fair trial. Hell, that's more than they deserve, but that's what they're allotted by our system here now. Some deserve capital punishment for treason against this country. Honestly, it wouldn't be the first time that capital punishment's been carried out on treasonous actors in this country. So, hey, there's a whole lot of them. A whole lot of them now, isn't there? More sad news. Mitch McConnell won't run again. He's one of them. But he's still going to serve out his term for another till 2026. Why he's not being forced to resign now? He can't even stand up. Can't even talk. He's had like strokes or whatever. What else do we got? We got California. Oh, we got some of the hateful Bobby Kennedy news. What's going on in public health? A little bit about that. Gonna watch our tongue here, because God forbid we run afoul of the censors. But we'll try to get that reporting out to you. Some California reporting. It looks like the high-speed rail is going to come under review here, and we have another. Thank you to Carrie out there in the audience, one of our subscribers. She brought to my attention that the lithium-ion battery factory has lit up again. Now, they're saying they put it out, but do you ever put these fires out? I don't know. It doesn't look like it. So more of that to report on. What else do we got? Bunch of Russia. I guess, by all accounts of your Mockingbird fake CIA media, Trump has taken the Musk-Putin brain chip, and so now Trump is Putin again. And so we're going to have to, what is this, Politico? But we got a bunch of the, Russia rejoices as Trump goes full Kremlin. Here, let me show you this. Let me show you this headline. There you go. Really? We're doing this again? They're going to do it again. They're going to do it again. Trump's a Russian again. So, all of that to go over. What is Zelenskyy going to do? I don't know. It was suggested yesterday they may try to assassinate him. He may escape to, I don't know, Argentina. Where do Nazis go when they escape? South America? They come to the United States and work for our government. Maybe he'll come over here and be a foreign policy advisor. Who friggin' knows with these maniacs? So we got all the fallout from the Russia-U.S. peace talks, leaving Ukraine out. We got aardvarks. You thought there was a ceasefire? Yeah, there's not a ceasefire. There was an alleged, quote, terrorist attack in aardvark land, bus bombings, and now our shadow president, Netanyahu, has ordered a full offensive operation in the West Bank. Thought there already was. I guess it wasn't full offensive operation. They were just bulldozing the place and killing everybody that got in the way. So now I guess they're going to double bulldoze the place and maybe firebomb them again. Who knows what all. The genocide will continue during the ceasefire. Wouldn't you know? All of that. And then, like I said, we got Beyond Treason, full-length documentary to wrap up the show. Quite disturbing. It's an older one, but it shouldn't be. It won't be surprising, but it'll just let you know again about all this treason. No one ever gets in trouble. So Will anybody get in trouble this time? I have my doubts. Call me skeptical, call me cynical. This day in history was a very slow day, actually. It is Black History Month. Trump celebrated that at the White House today. I think we have a clip with him and Tiger Woods. I think, isn't Tiger Woods like half Asian? I don't know, but I guess he's half black. I don't know. They left Obama out of it. What's up with that? He's black. I mean, white. Who is he even a citizen? I saw that going around again. Obama's not a citizen. It's like, I thought that was like old, really old. But anyway, happy Black History Month. And it is National Muffin Day. And so, what do they say here on my AI Windows? 70 recipes for National Muffin Day. And so that's very quaint, isn't it? Slow day on this day in history, actually. I'm sure a lot of other stuff happened, but the official story says in 1725, on this day of February 20th, 10 Indians were scalped by whites in New Hampshire for a 100-pound per scalp bounty paid to them by the British Crown. The good guys, of course. In 1809, the Supreme Court ruled on this day the federal government power is greater than any state. I think that's highly contested, but that was ruled by the Supreme Court on this day in 1809. In 1811, Austria, the country, declared bankruptcy. In 1865, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology was formed. In 1938, Germany officially supports Japan in the Sino-Japanese War. In 1943, American movie studio executives agree to allow the Office of War Information to censor movies. They've been censoring a long freaking time. In 1944, Batman and Robin comic strip premiered in newspapers around the country. And in 1968, Chinese Space Agency was established. And here's the segue to get to all the news for you. FBI, open up. I see in the chat there, yeah, maybe, I guess we'll have Ruckus on Monday, so look forward to that, to Ruckus coming on Monday. We'll just do it live, as Bill O'Reilly would say, booking guests live here, and then maybe not, Ruckus, I don't know. I think we might have another guest. You can come on with the guest, what the hell. Who is our guest anyway? Should have had that prepared. We got a guest from Grand Theft World, and I can't even remember the guy's name right now, off the top of my head. Let me look real quick, because now it's going to eat at me. Thank you for bearing with me. Let's see here. The heck's the guy's name? Rebunked News, but he's the co-host on the great weekly show Grand Theft World. And what the heck's the guy's name even? I can't even remember his name off the top of my head. Scott Armstrong, there you go. Scott Armstrong will be joining us. He's been on before, I think. Yeah, he has. Anyway, will it be Monday? Let me see when I had him scheduled. I think it was Monday. Monday the 24th. So Monday, Scott Armstrong and Ruckus if he wants to come on. So you're welcome to come on and join us, Ruckus. It should be a pretty good show there. Trying to do this, media networking thing. They got an operation going over there. You got an operation. I got an operation. We should all work together. You know what I'm saying? And try to spread the good word, because I think they do very good work over there at the Grand Theft World. And Scott on his own before he joined that outfit does good work. So yeah, should be very informative and great networking opportunity for all on Monday. Okay, a little bit of this day in history. Here's old Tiger Woods at the White House with Trump celebrating Black History Month today.
Would you want to just say a couple of words, Tiger? He doesn't. He's much more comfortable. Tiger.
Hey, it's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be here with you, Mr. President, and to be honored here with all of you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Love you too.
Go right over there. Thanks, Tiger.
Tiger being honored there. And of course, the big news of the day. Oh, remember we played this video, and it's turning out, we played this video back in December when it came out. New York cops are indicted on murder charges in case of beating handcuffed inmate Robert Brooks to death in December. Remember this video? They should be. No audio on this one. No audio, but remember this? It's quite horrific. They beat this guy to death. Remember that? Look. I don't know if you guys remember. I remember this. Very graphic. Might get in trouble for even showing the video. So the cops literally beat this guy to death in their custody. Murder. Straight up murder. And now it's being reported they're being indicted on murder charges, and that's what should happen. I don't know. Remember Trump said he's going to give cops indemnity? Remember that? That hasn't quite played out yet. We're going to have to keep a close eye on that. So the top federal cop, FBI Director Kash Patel, is in there now. Here's the vote. 51 yeas and 49 nays. Cash.app Patel of Nevada to be director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. So what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Is this guy going to go start arresting people? They need to start with the FBI, start arresting all the criminal FBIs. And they're like, Sam, they're not all bad. There's good people in the government. I'm like, really? They're like, you're too hard on the government. Really? If there was good people in there, they would arrest the bad ones and get rid of them. All through legal means, of course. And that never happened. So where are the good ones that I keep hearing about? The quote, patriot conservative media says, there's good guys in the government. Where are they? They don't go after any of the bad guys in the government. They come after me and you and shake us down in the protection racket known as government is what goes on here. So we're going to see how this plays out with Kash Patel. He's talked a big game. He certainly has talked a big game, but we're going to have to see. Look, this nonsense. This is the Rapid Response 47, right, on their X. And you go there, okay, that's all well and good. You post this, that's fine, right, giving us the news. But then you go down here, oh, here's some more Q posts. Shut the F up already. Just shut up with it. But these people, I just can't, man. I can't with the Q nonsense. Okay, so our conservative media here, Charlie Kirk, says that there's a very obvious reason why Adam Schiff is panicking outside the FBI this morning. Kash Patel, Adam Schiff is the worst criminal in Congress in the last 250 years. Arrest him, indict him. You know what I'm saying? Will they? Let's see, old pencil neck Schiff, now senator of this great state of California.
We cannot trust. This is someone who lacks the character to do this job, someone who lacks the integrity to do this job. We know that. Our Republican colleagues know that. The only qualification Cash Patel has to be FBI director is that when everyone else in the first Trump administration said, no, I won't do that, that crosses moral, ethical, and legal lines, Cash Patel said, sign me up. In the first Trump administration, as we are seeing in the second, you rise to the level of your sycophancy, and no one is a bigger or more dangerous sycophant than Cash Patel. This political hack does not deserve to be in this building. He can't do the job. He won't protect the public. He will misuse the resources of the Bureau. He will weaponize it against the president's political opponents rather than protecting the safety, the public safety of the American people.
Adam Schiff is the worst criminal in Congress in the last 250 years. And what broke that we're going to talk about right now.
Those are bold claims, Cash Patel. Investigate them. I don't disagree. But are you going to do something about it instead, or just talk big? What are they saying in the chat? People want to believe in a Superman like children with a whole white hat BS, which is an operation. Indeed, they're young. Indeed. And you don't got to believe that. If there's all these good guys, as they always say, and that wasn't even Q. They've been saying it for years and years and years. Oh, don't bash the whole government. There's a bunch of good guys. The whistleblowers that do come out, they wind up dead or freaking exiled to Russia. You know what I'm saying? And so I do believe there are just odds would tell you, okay, everybody here, everybody in this whatever government organization, not 100% of them are Satan worshiping evil people, right? And then there's a guy here and there that has a conscience and says, hey, look, they're doing all this illegal bad stuff, and they wind up disappearing. You know what I'm saying? And so but they're like, oh, they're still good FBI. Really? There's a laundry list of corruption. J6 as the most recent example. But you just follow orders. They're order followers, and they'll do anything for a paycheck, apparently. And so they're no better than the criminals that they supposedly are going after to keep us safe from, in my opinion. I really hope this isn't pro wrestling. Welshman, how you doing there? From the X. Well, Trump is in the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. Just saying. But he did revoke his, he's not part of the Screen Actors Guild anymore. So maybe that's a good thing. The Trump administration moves to gut the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Honestly, I didn't even know such thing exists. The CFPB, leading to the removal of agency signage from its Washington, D.C. headquarters. And so sadly, they're getting rid of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. This action, alongside a legal pause on CFPB activities ordered on February 9th, is seen as part of a broader strategy to reduce regulatory oversight on financial institutions. A coalition of state attorney generals, including New York's Attorney General Loretta James and California Attorney General Rob Bonta, are challenging these moves in court, defending the Bureau's role in consumer protection against financial exploitation. If they really believed in that, they would say end the Federal Reserve and end individual income taxes. So obviously it is all just theater there for us, isn't it? Or they would say we demand sound money for the people, Debt-free, sound money is what these clowns would be demanding if they actually cared about the financial protection of consumers in this country. So yeah, get rid of them. TSA, the date rapers, the body scanners that have never caught one terrorist since 9/11, since they've been established. The Transportation Security Administration has terminated 243. They need to abolish the whole damn thing. And it's of its probationary employees this week. These terminations are part of Trump's initiative to reduce the size of the federal workforce, specifically targeting employees during their probationary period for performance and conduct issues. This move reflects a broader governmental strategy to streamline federal agencies amongst mixed reactions. Who really, seriously, who? I guess the pro-corruption protesters are the only ones that would support the TSA, or if you're into being date raped and not even getting a reach around and not even getting a free drink out of the deal and getting radiation from the body scanners. If you're into that kind of sick freak show, then I guess you're into the TSA. But for everybody else, I don't know who the hell is having mixed reactions to this. They need to abolish the entire TSA. Trump administration to slash HUD disaster recovery staff. It's being reported that the Trump administration is planning to significantly reduce staff at the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, Office of Community Planning and Development, which funds disaster recovery efforts. The proposed cut will reduce the office's administrative staff from 936 to 150, an 84% decrease. This move comes after HUD promised but failed to deliver $1.8 billion in disaster recovery funds to Western North Carolina. Yeah, get rid of them all. How about end all of HUD too? From 936 to 150, get rid of them all. Let's end HUD too while we're at it. IRS layoffs. The Internal Revenue Service is set to lay off approximately 6,000 to 7,000 employees today, mostly compliance staff hired under the Biden administration. Concurrently, discussions are circulating about President Trump's plan to potentially replace income taxes with tariff revenue, with National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett stating its feasibility, though the implementation details remain uncertain. Do you want that $5,000 stimulus they're floating the idea of? Will we ever get it? Shall we worship government if we get the $5,000? Are they the good guys? Hell no. They owe us a hell of a lot more than $5,000 for what they've done here now. Getting rid of the individual income tax would be a good start, though. But we're going to see it other places. Something must be done. If they keep taxing us on our income, on our labor, essentially, then we have to have an itemized, the same way we are required, voluntarily, of course, try not filing. And I know there have been court cases where people have challenged it and won. Good luck with that. That's not my fight. I say just pay the extortion. But we are required, most of us who comply and don't want that hassle, to file an itemized tax return every year, right? Basically an income statement with the IRS. So they, in turn, shall file one back to us. Where is our money being spent? So we actually can target protests for corruption and say, no, we want it spent on this corrupt thing, not that corrupt thing, right? Right. Okay. Should we play this guy? Yeah, let's play this clip of the. Who is this guy? This is National Economic Council Director. Let's play this. It's a lot of big talk. I think Congress will have to actually be the ones to do this. They can lobby and maybe do some kind of workarounds. Let's listen to this about the taxes.
President Trump has spoken about replacing income tax with tariff revenue, especially with all this waste, fraud, and abuse that we're seeing cut. Is that a possibility?
Absolutely. And in fact, if you think about the China tariff revenue that we're estimating is coming in from the 10% that we just added, plus the de minimis thing, that it's between $500 billion and $1 trillion over 10 years is our estimate. And that's something that is outside of the reductions that markets are seeing through the negotiations up on the Hill. And so we expect that the tariff revenue is actually going to make it much easier for Republicans to pass a bill, and that was the president's plan all along.
We're going to see. Wes Young say they weeded out the good people 150 years ago? Probably about that. Thousands of layoffs expected to start hitting the IRS. But I'm telling you, man, we don't even know yet, right? We kind of know. We know what the red flags are on your tax return. So talk to your tax accountant, your tax preparer, and don't throw any of those red flags up, and you should be fine, because they're going to use AI to scan all these tax returns now. That's a large reason why they're cutting this workforce. They're just simply not needed anymore to avoid an audit. New York Times tells the CIA plans largest mass firing in nearly 50 years. The possible purge of officers working on recruiting and diversity comes as the agency moves to comply with the spirit of an executive order banning efforts to diversify the federal workforce. What are all these woke spies going to do? Go to work for private industry and be even more unaccountable than they already are, apparently. The CIA last conducted a large-scale firing in 1977 when President Jimmy Carter ordered the agency to move away from covert action. The CIA director at the time, Stansfield Turner, moved to fire a whole 198 officers involved in clandestine operations. But even that downsizing was done with some care, sparing some people who are close to retirement age. Yeah. God forbid any government suffer whatsoever. Forget all the suffering that they bestowed upon the American people and the rest of the world. God forbid any of them ever suffer and miss a meal. Here is a comedy break, because we need one after all this suffering by the government. Entire federal workforce replaced by one 16-year-old Chick-fil-A worker. Satire from Babylon Bee. Let's watch this clip.
As part of the ongoing effort by the federal government to reduce spending and streamline operations, all 3 million federal employees are being replaced by one 16-year-old Chick-fil-A employee named Devin. Devin will be responsible for everything the 3 million federal employees used to accomplish as part of their day-to-day jobs, from delivering mail to all 340 million Americans, to cleaning the toilets at Yellowstone National Park, and even advising the president as the new Secretary of State.
Devin, are you excited for your new job?
Yeah, you know, it's going to be a really good way to earn a little extra money for college. It's a real blessing. Praise the Lord.
And you're still working here at Chick-fil-A?
Yeah, just putting in some extra hours after running my 9 to 5. You know, just pretty much running the entire federal government.
Economists claim the move will save the federal government approximately $300 billion in payroll each year, less Devin's wages of $17 an hour. But savings aren't the only benefit, experts say. As a Chick-fil-A worker, Devin is said to be extremely efficient at his job and annoyingly friendly. A stark contrast to what most people think of when they have to interact with a federal employee.
Yeah, I'll get your tax return processed right away, Mrs. Heffingberg. Sorry for the delay. No, not short-staffed at all. Yes, it's my pleasure. Hey, sorry about this. I just gotta do a quick menu check. Can you put your arms out for me? Hey, have a great day.
Thanks.
My pleasure.
Yeah, so I'm just finishing up solving this murder. It was the wife, obviously. Then I'm off to inspect some suspicious eggs at the Department of Agriculture. Then I'm going to answer about 47 million emails for the VA. Thank you for your service, vets. It's my pleasure.
What's your pleasure?
Oh, I don't know why I said that. It's my pleasure.
For their part, Americans seem pleased with the change, with 92% of survey respondents saying they approve of Devin's performance so far, approximately 8% saying they aren't sure, and 1% simply saying, my pleasure. That was Devin. Devin said that. Coming up next, a new study has found that under the Trump administration, the number of genders has reached a concerning 10-year low.
Abolish the whole thing except for Devin, huh? We can do this. Trump reinstates Garden of American Heroes today for Black History Month, and I did see Ruckus say the fake news said that Trump was getting rid of Black History Month. Well, apparently not. He did a big ceremony at the White House today. Trump announced the revival of the National Garden of American Heroes during Black History Month event at the White House today. The park will feature statues of numerous African-American icons, including Kanye West. No, I just made that one up. Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, Billie Holiday, Aretha Franklin, Corletta Scott King, Frederick Douglass, Jackie Robinson, Martin Luther King, Muhammad Ali, Kobe Bryant. I want to know where's Malcolm X in all of this. We demand a statue of Malcolm X. This initiative, which was initially proposed in 2020, was canceled by the Biden administration, and now it's been reinstated by the Trump administration. The big racist Trump. They're honoring Black history at the White House today. Quite horrific indeed. I know everyone's sad about this. I shed a tear when I first heard about this morning. Senator Turtleman, corrupt beyond anyone's dreams. Mitch McConnell out of Kentucky will not seek re-election, he announced today. The problem is, we have a video of him. I'm not even going to play it. The problem is, why is he even still there? He's voting against all of Trump. Why is he even there? Why is he not forced to resign? They could impeach him. Why is he not being hit with a cane, challenged to a duel by other senators? Get this guy out of there. Give him the hook. He needs to go. He's falling down, having brain glitches. Just simply retire and be with your family there, dude. You know what I mean? He has literally no support left in the Senate. They've all shifted to supporting Trump and his agenda. So I think they need to investigate old Mitch McConnell there, along with the rest of the Senate while you're at it there, Cash Patel. So, yeah, he needs to be indicted and resign in shame for being the piece of garbage that he is, old Mitch McConnell there, Republican, former Senate leader, actually. But if they don't want to even do all that, he needs to retire at the very least and stop the elder abuse. Stop the elder abuse in our government. Yeah, we have video of him. Well, let's play this one of them freezing. Everybody remembers this. Let's play this in honor of Mitch McConnell.
Did you hear the question, Senator? Running for re-election in 2026? All right, I'm sorry, you all. We're going to need a minute. Senator. Penny.
Okay.
Somebody.
And so that was a while back. That was like 6 months ago or something. Elder abuse, man. This guy's not fit to serve. You're gone. But they say they want Huffman in the YouTube chat says, well, we'll put it on the screen. Yeah, might as well. I demand a statue for drummer from Bill Withers. Ain't It No Sunshine video. Yeah. What the hell? What the hell? Let's have that statue too. Get rid of the George Floyd statues and start putting up some real Black American heroes there in the nonsense. And so who's going to take over there at the Kentucky Senate seat? We got maybe possibly the only guy we could possibly maybe. I never trust the government, any of them, but at least he has the best rhetoric, at least out of all of them, is Thomas Massie in the House of Representatives. And probably the best rhetoric in the Senate is Rand Paul, honestly, even though I don't trust him to freaking walk my dog. But besides that whole thing, that they work for the government, maybe they can get another good guy in there with better rhetoric than old McConnell, at least. So is Thomas Massie going to run for that seat? There's speculation on the interwebs that he may take up a run there, but he's anti-aardvark, or at least not pro-aardvark enough to be taking AIPAC money. And so that's going to come up, I'm sure. Will AIPAC corrupt Thomas Massie in the Senate? Remember, they ran $1 million campaigns against him for his House seat because he wasn't pro-aardvark enough and didn't take their bribe money. So that's a good mark for him in my book, but it's going to be a big challenge there because AIPAC is going to go after him for sure. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that. And who else is saying? There's other people already jumping at the opportunity. Who else was it? Daniel Cameron, former Attorney General of Kentucky's name is being floated out there. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people looking at that Senate seat, but Massie wouldn't be bad. It wouldn't be bad for that seat. But I'm sure his district needs him there in the House. And like I said, AIPAC is going to go against him big time, or at least they did his last election. Maybe they'll bribe him with enough shekels this time around. I don't know. We'll have to follow that race as it develops. But Mitch McConnell, honestly, he needs to resign now, and they need to do an interim appointment for that Kentucky Senate seat until the election, or hold an emergency election. Trump's first month, Stephen Miller calls out media list policy achievements. We went over that a little bit of White House propaganda yesterday. Let's hear from old Stephen Miller. He has good rhetoric too. I mean, I got to admit, I wouldn't trust him as far as I could throw him, but let's hear what he had to say about Trump's first month.
It is true that many of the people in this room for 4 years failed to cover the fact that Joe Biden was mentally incompetent and was not running the country. It is also true that many people in this room who have used this talking point that Elon is not elected fail to understand how government works. So I'm glad for the opportunity for a brief civics lesson. A president is elected by the whole American people. He's the only official in the entire government that is elected by the entire nation, right? Judges are appointed, members of Congress are elected at the district or state level, which is one man. And the Constitution, Article 2, has a clause known as the vesting clause, and it says the executive power shall be vested in a president, singular. The whole will of democracy is imbued into the elected president. That president then appoints staff to then impose that democratic will onto the government. The threat to democracy, indeed the existential threat to democracy, is the unelected bureaucracy of lifetime tenured civil servants who believe they answer to no one, who believe they can do whatever they want without consequence, who believe they can set their own agenda no matter what Americans vote for. So Americans vote for radical FBI reform, and FBI agents say they don't want to change. Or Americans vote for radical reform on our energy policies, but EPA bureaucrats say they don't want to change. Or Americans vote to end DEI, racist DEI policies, and lawyers in the Department of Justice say they don't want to change. What President Trump is doing is he is removing federal bureaucrats who are defying democracy by failing to implement his lawful orders, which are the will of the whole American people.
What am I going to do about this with the pro-corruption party that I'm starting? What are they over there on the YouTube? T. Harris says that ultimately the AI will deduct what it says are your taxes directly from any benefits checks you're entitled to. You'll pay everything, only authorizing with your iris phone, forehead, mark, or phone. Mark of the beast. Yeah. Well, part of the corruption party platform is you direct deposit your paycheck to the government and they give you back what they think you need to eat. And maybe some weeks they don't give you anything. And because you don't need to eat those weeks as part of the battle against obesity in America. Right? So I've been campaigning for that a long time. Let's continue here. What do we got? Stuff just Carrie's sharing with us here. Why no congressional hearing on this? Let's see what she just shared. I did have a little section. Oh, it's a video. Can't play that video. Don't even know what it is. Sorry, Carrie. I will watch it later, though. So now U.S. Supreme Court tackles straight woman's reverse discrimination case. And so I don't know what this is all about. And there was a survey, whatever poll, whatever it's worth, like 9% now identify as something other than heterosexual. I saw that today. I don't trust any of these polls. What is it? I forget even. I think it was Gallup, whatever, man. Their polls are BS. But anyway. Let's take a look at this story. So Marlene Ames received numerous promotions and good evaluations over the years working in Ohio's youth correction system. So when she was denied a promotion and demoted in 2019 with a $40,000 pay cut, she said she felt shocked and hurt and humiliated. But according to Ames, that was not all. She had a gay supervisor at the time. She was passed over for a promotion in favor of a gay woman, and she was demoted in favor of a gay man, both of whom Ames asserts were less qualified than her. That's how I came to feel, and I was becoming discriminated against because I was straight and pushed aside for them. Ames, 60 years old, said in an interview. The U.S. Supreme Court is due next Wednesday to hear arguments in a bid to revive her civil rights lawsuit against Ohio Department of Youth Services after lower courts threw it out. Well, she's obviously a bigot and bad for being white and straight and a woman, so good luck with that. We'll have to see how that case goes. Okay, what can't be spoken of is here. Can we even say this? RFK Jr. wastes no time revisiting childhood miracle policies. So, yeah, we're going to have to see. Crowd boos Pfizer head at White House event. Let's watch this clip. Shocking, I know. During a Black History event at the White House, I don't know why they always write that. It's AI writing this. President Donald Trump introduced an individual referred to as head of Pfizer. This introduction was met with loud boos from the crowd, as depicted by multiple posts. Let's watch this.
Pfizer here, so I want to thank him. One of the great. We also have the head of Pfizer here, so I want to thank him. One of the great people, one of the great businessmen. Thank you, Albert. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I want to congratulate our newly sworn-in Secretary of House.
There you go, white hats, everybody, all the Trump sycophants. Why the hell is Barola at the White House for Black History Month and Trump still thinks it's cool? What are we missing? Oh, it's a secret 11D chess that we just don't understand. No, I think we do understand. But we're going to have to see how this plays out at HHS. RFK Jr. begins overhaul of miracle advisory panels. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has initiated a review of members of the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, ACIP, and other advisory panels with intentions to remove those perceived to have conflicts of interest. This move comes shortly after his confirmation as HHS Secretary, leading to the indefinite postponement of ACIP's first meeting under his tenure. No final decisions on the implementation of these changes or scope have been made public. This happened, and it's very sad. I know I shed a tear when I read this story last night. Trump administration yanks CDC flu miracle campaign, reported by NPR here. Let's show that story. This is very sad news indeed, because it has like a 30, I forget the exact number. Don't quote me, but just look up the efficacy of this year's flu miracle. And it's like I know it's under 50% because I can't remember the exact percentage. It's like 30 something percent. That's USA Today. I remember looking it up when I was reporting that on the time about it. Way under 50%, but very effective. And so this clown world campaign is no more from the CDC, sadly. The CDC is stopping a successful miracle campaign that just juxtaposed images of wild animals such as a lion and with its cute counterpart like a kitten as an analogy for how immunization can help tame the flu. They treat you like children. You are a child if you believe their lies, sorry to say. So yeah, that's a step in the right direction, I would have to say, but not gonna comply with our new corruption party, that's for sure. So we're gonna have to maybe talk to the White House about this. On to, and we're almost at the, well, hell, let's just do it now before we get into the next. Did you see Barola's frog neck? I don't know if that was a real video there, Young, or not. I did see the video. I don't know if that was altered or what. Was that his inner lizard coming out? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I did see that video. Yep, the old Gila monster. Is he a human? I don't know. Is he a drone, clone, robot, Nephilim? Friggin', who knows, man? Is it even him? Is it some other guy wearing a mask? We know they have the mask technology. Who friggin' knows? Doesn't act like a human, that's for sure. Okay, let's take the commercial break now live. And I did not, because they make you jump through more hoops. I did not even get it fully activated yet, but thank you to the audience, especially Barry, our #1 producer out there on the interwebs, helping us, being our hype man in the chats and helping us run on his accounts, multiple machines and multiple accounts to help us reach our threshold of our campaign to become monetized on YouTube. And we've reached the first part of that campaign. Thankfully, to all you out in the audience, I truly do appreciate it. And other members of Weaponized News do truly appreciate it. So we're on to the second part of the campaign. The first part was 500 subscribers and 3,000 hours watched in 365 days. We have completed that task. And again, thank you from the bottom of my heart, truly, for helping me achieve this goal. The next part of that campaign, and for full transparency, let me just show you, as we fight through the censorship there, not part of a conspiracy, but conveniently enough, coincidentally, as part of our coincidence happening series, the same day that we qualified for monetization, we were hit with a false flag strike that YouTube actually removed after I appealed it. But it's just a coincidence, no conspiracy against weaponized news, of course. So, but anyway, back to, and what was that, like Monday or something? I couldn't live stream on YouTube on Monday because the strike says you are banned from live streaming for a week. But upon appeal, they found there was no misinformation in my show, and they restored us fully. And I showed those emails, I think yesterday or the day before. I don't know. It's all a blur. Anyway, back to the live commercial break here. Sorry for the ranting, but just had to do a little explaining for new people that haven't been following along. Look at that, Huffman. I got 2 phones playing quite a bit. Thank you very much. You are a great news hound, weaponized news hound there, Huffman. It is truly appreciated to use your computing power toward the cause here of monetizing weaponized news. Anyway, let me show you guys so we can get on with the news. Okay, so we qualified here, as I said, with a 500 subscribers, 3,000 hours watched thresholds. I still need to apply. You have to do, and I screwed up here, honestly, and did the two double verification deal, and that's a pain in the ass. But anyway, that's on me as the administrator of this account. And so once I get this up, then we can get super chats going for those that feel the need to donate directly. I would say donate other ways if you're feeling that charitable. But we can hook up a shopping cart, sell items, and hook up memberships. I doubt if I will do any of that through YouTube, Google, but we'll see how it sorts out. And then the next phase, as you can see here, is to reach 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours watched, and we're in 365 days. So we're like 900 whatever hours away to reach this threshold. So everybody on the other channels on Kick, we're on Kick now again. Are we on Kick? I think we're on Kick again. I put us back on Kick for whatever that's worth. It's like this video game streaming platform, whatever. The kids are on it. Who knows? Maybe we'll reach somebody new. For those on Kick, for those on X, BitChute, Rumble, Odyssey, Facebook. I think I named them all. Maybe I missed one. Rockfin. Please come over and subscribe to Weaponized News YouTube channel. It will be greatly appreciated as we try to reach the 1,000 subscriber threshold here now, and racking up these hours watched with the help of Barry, with the help of Huffman and others out there. It is greatly appreciated, all of your efforts. Okay, enough of that. Back to the hard news here. And yeah, wouldn't you know it, the Moss Landing lithium-ion battery factory has lit on fire again. Thank you to Carrie for bringing that to my attention. We reported on it during the LA fires quite extensively, but it turns out that the Vistura battery facility in Moss Landing has once again lit on fire. They're telling us that it's under control. Call me skeptical. I have my doubts. Did they ever even put out the first one? But before that, let's play this older video. This is like 4 years old, via reposted by Duke Reporter, about the arsons here in California. This is from old InfoWars. Greg Reese, 4 years old, just to give us a little bit of background history about what the heck is going on here. What does Huffman say? It was in the YouTube leaks before that they intentionally tried to demoralize creators by messing with their stats and channel. I didn't even know there was a YouTube leaks. My YouTube is a dead fish. So is mine. Okay, here's the old video from like 4 years old, but to give us some context about the arson, I'm sorry, it's climate change, or now being called extreme weather events here in California.
This perfect storm. The debate is over around climate change. Just come to the state of California. Observe it with your own eyes. It's not an intellectual debate. It's not even debatable.
The debate is over around climate change.
California's rogue governor says the fires are due to climate change. But anyone with a modicum of awareness knows that this is an outrageous lie. We know exactly what causes the California wildfire. It is the result of two factors: dry seasons and people. Official state records have only been kept since the 1950s, and 2020 has been the most destructive season on record. But this isn't a new phenomenon, and the fires of the past were more destructive than the modern era. Through studies of tree rings and other natural evidence, researchers have documented multiple droughts in California during the past 1,000 years, including one that began in the year 850, which lasted 2.5 centuries. Before European settlers arrived in California, indigenous peoples used controlled burns to manage the dry season and to increase and improve their harvest. It is estimated they would burn 4.4 million acres of forest each year, and that is twice as much as 2020. Studies have shown that 97% of all forest fires are caused by humans. Smoking, campfires, and other accidents have always been a problem. Experts blame the recent wildfires on fire suppression and an overabundance of wood fuel. One of the reasons why the indigenous people burned so much forest was to keep this under control. Aside from human accidents, there is also arson, and we have seen plenty of arson in 2020. It's been sort of the theme.
If this country doesn't give us what we want, then we will burn down this system and replace it.
Several people have been arrested for starting fires along the entire West Coast. Homeowners are catching arsonists on their property. There are reports of people throwing Molotov cocktails out of moving vehicles on the freeway.
Suspicious vehicle, 213 northbound 205. It's a dark Subaru with Texas plates throwing Molotov cocktails.
And there are videos of arsonists setting people's homes on fire. We know for certain that at least one of the arrested arsonists is directly involved with the BLM Antifa movement, and the rest certainly seem to fit the bill. Local news is reporting on it.
The man has been arrested, accused of starting this fire.
One of two men accused of intentionally setting fire to fields along freeways.
But the FBI and the mainstream media are in full denial. A Clackamas County Sheriff's deputy was placed on administrative leave after warning locals about coordinated arson attacks.
What I'm worried about is that there's people stashing stuff, right? It means that they're going to go in preparation, all right? And I don't want to sound like some doomsdayer, but it's getting serious.
And the Democrat Party is telling you it is all climate change.
Mother Earth is angry. She's telling us, whether she's telling us with hurricanes on the Gulf Coast, or fires in the West, whatever it is, that the climate crisis is real and has an impact.
And telling you that the fires will soon come to your town if you don't vote for climate change.
What we're experiencing right here is coming to a community all across the United States of America unless we get our act together on climate change.
Which is a pretty nasty threat, considering how many cities across America have burned by the hands of radical leftists over the summer. The 2006 film Apocalypto beautifully illustrated how the ancient Mayans' advanced knowledge of astronomy could have been used to frighten the superstitious masses into offering their own to be sacrificed on the altar of false idols, who had the power to blacken out the sun. And there is nothing new under the sun. People today will throw away their children's birthright because of ignorance, faith in false idols, and their blatant lies. For Infowars.com, this is Greg Reese.
So that's an old one, 4 years old there. Let's go to the recent Moss Landing fires. Or no, they also, I got a crazy cat up here. Can I get more views with the cat in the video? No? Okay. Duke report here now. Of course, here's the cat. You guys. Here's my cat. Can you guys see him? Ah, there it is. Oh, sorry about that. Here. Can we get more views for a cat in the video? See that? Little cat. Okay, no, seriously. The Duke report, for those new, Peter Duke, he lived in Pacific Palisades, had his house burned down. All his family's house is burned down. He's pretty pissed off. And I don't blame him one little bit. He says, who will be chosen Masonic architect for the rebuilding of the Pacific Palisades? FWIW, the Pacific Palisades Freemasons, meet in the Ronald Reagan American Legion post that was unharmed in the fire. How does Freemasonry influence urban planning and globalist agendas? Freemasonry applies esoteric principles to city planning using astronomical alignments and symbolic designs. This tradition extends to major metropolitan centers, including London, where Masonic architects such as Sir Christopher Wren played a key role in post-Great Fire reconstruction. Just saying, man. Just saying. I think old Peter Duke's just saying. Overnight fire at Moss Landing battery plant under control. They tell us East Bay Times says, but they told us it was under control last time. Here's let's watch this report about the Moss Landing lithium ion battery fire again.
one, but we're better safe than sorry. The more you protect your lungs and your body, the better.
Tracy,
And I think the recommendations,
it's like
if they
attacking me
say that
during the
you're in an
show.
area that's affected, you need to close your windows and doors, stay indoors, and you don't want the outdoor air coming in, so you do need to turn off those air systems. And if they tell you to evacuate, get out of there.
Yeah.
The poor cat had to leave. Sorry about that. Here's some more raw video of it. This was 2 days ago, I think. When was this posted? This was posted on the 16th, so this is 4 days ago. They keep it very hush-hush, quiet. Again, thank you to Carrie for pointing this out to me. How wind, let's watch this report actually. How wind is impacting Moss Landing battery facility flare-up. Did the thing ever go out? I don't know. Is this wind blowing it all over the place? Let's watch this report, News 8.
A bit, but obviously some concern about
wind. Yes.
You know it, but just as Zoe mentioned, any little bit of wind we're seeing right now is predominantly coming in from the north and the northeast, and that is pushing towards the ocean. So we are seeing generally light winds, which is good news, and you can see temperatures right now in those upper 40s, light east-northeast wind, 4 miles per hour, gusting to 5, so that's relatively light. However, as Zoe mentioned, any water would not be a good thing. There are very slight rain chances for tomorrow, plus a front coming through that would increase the winds. But right now, Dan and Aaron, the winds are light, and that's good news.
All right. Thank you very much, Gina. Appreciate it. Now, public safety agencies are in a unified command due to the smoke and fire at the Vistra battery facility there in Moss Landing.
Goes on to say that out of an abundance of caution, safety agencies are urging residents to close windows and doors overnight. We, of course, will continue to follow developments and have the latest for you a little bit later.
Remember, there's like 70% of green vegetables, lettuce, broccoli, artichokes. There's all kind of agriculture there that could be potentially affected by the toxins from the fires. Now, heavy metals. We went through a list of all the scientific names of all the toxins, right? So, hey, be aware that your produce from this area, if you can even know that it is from this area, may be contaminated due to toxins from these fires. Let's watch this short clip. This is the one that Carrie sent me. Massive lithium battery fire again, a month after the last inferno.
So we have a kayaker right here, and we have a lithium battery fire right here, probably 300 feet away. And of course, like I said, we do have wildlife.
Nancy Pelosi bought a lot of stock right before the original fire in January. It appears that there was very little regulation followed, if any, leading up to these fires.
Hey, it's Jordan. I am in Flint, Michigan, East Palestine, Ohio, Tumwa, Iowa. Please support.
So that guy is doing good reportings about it. Let's see. I didn't know about the Nancy Pelosi stock. Let's watch a little more about this report. What are they called? The Coup? What are they called? They got a pretty big YouTube channel, 400,000 subscribers of their Status Coup News. Let's watch a little bit more about this report. Young remembers, you have better memory than me, Salad Bowl of America, it's been called, that the whole region, agricultural region right around this lithium ion battery factory that keeps catching on fire. Indeed.
50 to 100 miles away is on fire again. Let me repeat, a month later, on fire again. and residents I'm speaking with are experiencing worsening symptoms as this fire blazed overnight. It seems it is continuing even into today. Let me show you video of the fire. This is from photojournalist Alex Landos. As you could see, that is a pretty hefty plume.
I don't think we're going to get any new reporting out of it, really. They did list all the toxic chemicals the first time around. That was good. I honestly didn't have a time to watch this whole report. But back to the comments there quickly. Huffman says, the best way I've heard it put is Alex Jones is a specialist at making the truth unbelievable. Yeah, he is a sensationalist, no doubt. There is no doubt about that. Did anyone else notice the story? Freemasons returned to Syria after 50-year absence to promote brotherhood. Totally not sinister. See? We're promoting brotherhood, Huffman. Okay. What else did we have about that? That's about it. It's still the salad bowl of America, potentially very toxic now due to these ongoing fires at the Moss Landing lithium-ion battery factory. It is quite concerning, actually. Jones is COINTELPRO. Potentially, I don't know. He is a Trump sycophant, that's for sure. I honestly can't. I barely watch them anymore. Can barely stand them. But anyway, I think he has done a lot of good work previously to the last, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years. He did a lot of good work during the medical intervention period. But he is a sensationalist at the very least. Okay, moving on here to he let Simon on there a lot. They did play my reports, a couple of my reports in the past. You know what I mean? So okay. The U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy has initiated a compliance review of California's high-speed rail project, focusing on $4 billion in federal funds allocated for 2 associated projects. This investigation comes amidst public and political scrutiny over the project's delays, cost overruns, and its slow progress. With no tracks laid yet, despite $15.7 billion spent. The review is part of broader concerns about the project's management and its alignment with initial promises made to Californians. Let's watch Congressman Kevin Kiley here talk about it. He's out of the Yuba City area, up a little north of Sacramento.
This ill-fated project is a blight on our landscape and an embarrassment to our state. But it's more than that. It symbolizes the decline of modern California under the current leadership. It showcases political ineptitude on an epic scale. This doomed project represents the failure of planning and governance, of vision and leadership, of transparency and accountability, of competence and common sense that have turned the greatest state in the country into the most popular state to leave. It exemplifies the utter disregard for taxpayer dollars, for property rights, for economic reality, for democratic accountability that have caused our beautiful state to now lead the nation in all the wrong ways. And it captures the small-mindedness of our political leaders who think of themselves as visionaries for plowing ahead with a 20th century project that won't be finished until the 22nd century at best. Yes, The failure of high-speed rail represents all that has gone wrong in California. And that is precisely why this is a very hopeful day. Once we end this project, it'll be a new beginning for California. We are turning the page in this state. A coalition for common sense is ascending. And President Trump has said there can be no golden age without the golden state. And today we're taking a major step forward.
I don't know what they're chatting there. Let me read this quickly. I don't even know where that was. That was a raucous crowd for sure. Maybe they're part of my pro-corruption party, and they're mad about weeding out the corruption. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't say in his post, and that was from Kevin Kiley, Congressman. It doesn't say where that rally was, but sorry about the background noise. I didn't realize it was so loud. Let's see. Okay, continuing here. I think that's all the California news that we have. Onto the CPAC is today. CPAC was today, and was it Conservative Political Action Conference there. Here's J.D. Vance, Vice President, talking about Germany's entire defense is subsidized by American taxpayers. And who could say they did not see that coming?
Germany's entire defense is subsidized by the American taxpayer. There are thousands upon thousands of American troops in Germany today. Do you think that the American taxpayer is going to stand for that if you get thrown in jail in Germany for posting a mean tweet? Of course they're not, right? So the point that I try to make to our European friends, and I think that they're our friends, I believe that, I know President Trump does, is that friendship is based on shared values. You do not have shared values if you're jailing people for saying we should close down our border. You don't have shared values if you cancel elections because you don't like the result, and that happened in Romania. You do not have shared values if you're so afraid of your own people that you silence them and shut them up. Germany.
So that could be, T. Harris brings up a good point. That could be the logo of the new corruption party. Put your fingers in your ears. A guy putting his fingers in his ears screaming, "I can't hear you," while they're exposing corruption. So yeah, could work. It could work indeed. We have Malay there, but trying to get a little bit more serious, it's hard with some of this stuff because it's so friggin' ridiculous, right? Okay. Can we have the peace there and have the Russians and Ukrainians stop killing each other? Let's go back to 2014 CNN report, where CNN reported Kiev shelling their own citizens in the Donbass. Let's watch this report. But of course, it was unprovoked invasion by Putin. And Putin or Trump, or how does it work? I guess it would be Musk has put a Putin brain chip in Trump here now. We'll get to that. I'm making that up, of course, but you'll see. You'll see how I could come to that conclusion.
Petro Poroshenko will have a hard time winning back hearts and minds in this city. As the people of Donetsk sweep up the debris of their homes and livelihoods, they are hardened against a president they say is killing his own people. We are Ukrainian, but they kill us, this man says. So we probably need our own country, because these people in Kiev, they are not brothers for us. The shells hit these homes days ago, but the tears are still fresh.
27-го, 28-го, 29-го очень сильно. Фактически мы живем под подвалом.
We live on the ground. It was so hard for 2 weeks, especially for 27, 28, 29. But only today it's quiet. Sorry, I need to go.
2 people were killed outside this block of flats last Wednesday. One of them was a 50-year-old woman, the other a 34-year-old woman. Her husband, who won't talk to us, he says he's in shock, managed to make it down to the cellar with their little child, but she just didn't have the time. And this is a story that repeats itself over and over in dozens of apartment blocks, with civilians being killed by the constant shelling around Donetsk. The city's trauma hospital is filled with the civilian wounded, shrapnel embedded in the flesh and bone of market sellers' legs, the broken limbs of pensioners far too old to run. There was one war, and this is the second war, this old lady tells me. I was born in 1940 in World War II, and I will probably die before this war is over. Valentina Popova in the next-door ward lost her leg and her arm to indiscriminate artillery shells. Switching to the Ukrainian language, she makes a heart-rending plea to the president. We used to dance, sing, do everything in Ukrainian, she says. Poroshenko, Mr. Poroshenko, please listen to us. Why don't you understand your people? Be a man, be human. Please stop your aggression. Stop this war. But there is little sign of that. This once thriving city is now half empty, its railway station bombed. The forces unleashed by this conflict, greater perhaps than Mr. Poroshenko can control.
Putin did that, right? No, it was actually the Ukrainian government backed by NATO and the United States. That crowd was going nuts. They were. Okay, here's Trump yesterday, I think. Says, I love Ukraine, but Zelenskyy has done a terrible job. Let's watch this short clip.
Satellites. I love Ukraine, but Zelenskyy has done a terrible job. His country is shattered, and millions of people have unnecessarily died. And you can't bring a war to an end if you don't talk to both sides. You got to talk. They haven't been talking for 3 years.
And then Trump again calls Zelenskyy a dictator, essentially. Dictator without elections in the greatest democracy in Europe.
He refuses to have elections. It's low in the real Ukrainian polls. I mean, how can you be high with every city is being demolished? It's hard to be high. Somebody said, oh, no, his polls are good. Give me a break. Every city is being demolished. They look like a demolition site, every single one of them. And the only thing he was really good at was playing Joe Biden like a fiddle. He played him like a fiddle. That's an expression we use, yes, sir, to say that he's pretty easy. A dictator without elections. Zelenskyy better move fast or he's not going to have a country left. Got to move fast because that war is going in the wrong direction. In the meantime, we're successfully negotiating an end to the war with Russia, something I'll admit that only Trump is going to be able to do in the Trump administration. We're going to be able to do it. I think Putin even admitted that.
Isn't it funny when he talks about he refers to himself in the third person? Yes, UK helped as well in all of the war efforts there. So not to leave you out, I want to know. Here is who's this guy? Bob Amsterdam, an international human rights lawyer who had been banned from Russia by Putin, says Ukraine is the single most repressive country he's ever been to. Quote, the idea of democracy is a farce. Here he is in a short clip on with Tucker. And so how dare this guy? How dare him? Trump says he wants to audit the hundreds of billions sent to Ukraine and reiterated it's time for elections there.
or, you know, we'll see what happens. But I'm going to resurrect it, or things are not going to make him too happy. And look, it's time for elections. Haven't had an election in a long time. It's wonderful to say, you know, we can't have an election, but it's time for elections. And it's also time to find out what happened with all the money. Because he made the statement that half of it, he doesn't know where it is, or something like that. And I'd like to find out all the money that we've been sending to Ukraine, where is it? And I can tell you we're doing very well with Russia. We're going to do something with Russia that he was unable to do. We can make a deal with Russia to stop the killing of, you know, potentially additional millions of people. The soldiers are being just wiped out on both sides, wiped out. It's horrible. You know, the weaponry today is so powerful, so, you know, strong, that it's killing a lot of soldiers. And I don't want to see they're Russian and they're Ukrainian. I don't want to see those soldiers killed. They have mothers and fathers. They have sisters and brothers. I don't want to see them killed.
Who could argue with that? Yeah, maybe fake and they're all in secret societies behind the scenes, but real people are dying. That's for sure. Here's here is old Slovakian president who was they attempted to assassinate this guy. Remember that? A couple times. They shot him, and he's still around though. Old Robert Fico, the PM of Slovakia. Let's watch this clip where he says, and it's a short clip. I'm not here to walk hand in hand with President Zelenskyy. I'm fed up with him. He is constantly begging and extorting others for money. This has to stop.
Nie som na to, aby som šiel po ruke prezidentovi Zelenskému. A priznám sa, že už niekedy mám plné zuby. Chodí po tej Európe, len žobre a vydiera, ostatných pýta peniaze. Jednoducho toto musí skončiť. Skúste trošku myslieť aj na túto krajinu. Nie iba na svoje úzkoprosé politické cieľe. Čo budeme robiť pre Boha, keď ten plyn nebude? Vy si myslíte, že Nemci nám pošlú plyn, keď oni budú mať málo? Nepošlú nám nič. Nič nám nepošlú.
President Zelenskyy meets with the U.S. representative for Ukraine, Keith Kellogg.
Як у вас настрій?
Завжди бойовий.
How are you, sir? Got a good concert.
Good to see you. How are you? Thank you so much.
Very proud of you, what you're doing.
Continuing here, this is what I'm talking about. For those, remember the Russia hoax. It's back. It's back. Russia rejoices as Trump goes full Kremlin. Politico. Right? So Trump's a Russian agent again.
Russia, Vladimir Putin, Russia hates Russia, Putin, Russian, Moscow, Russian, pro-Russian, Russian, the Russians, Moscow, Russia, Putin, Russia against us, Russians, Russia against the U.S., the Russian government scheme, the Russians, Vladimir Putin, Russia, Vladimir Putin, Russia, Putin and Russia, Russia, Moscow, Russia, Russian, the Russians, Russians, Russia, Putin, Russia, the Soviet Empire, the second of the 20th century's great evils, communism, Russia, communism, Russia, assault by Russia, Russia's.
Putin despises the West in general and the United States in particular, the Soviet Empire. Russia. They're the adversary. They want to bring us down, the Soviet Union.
Russia.
Undermine the West, Soviet communists on the left.
Russia. That does it for us tonight. We will see you again tomorrow.
Zelenskyy can't ever wear a suit there, Nexus, because he wants to look like a man of the people in his war fatigues, I suppose, is why he never wears a suit. More from Maddow says American people will finally revolt against their government because Trump made a deal with Putin. Let's watch this short clip.
And eerily and in a very out of character way tells the American people he is not allowed to discuss that relationship or his communications with that leader. The political reality of this administration is going to be shaped by whether or not the people who oppose him strongly enough and effectively enough. The political reality of this administration and this presidency will be determined by whether the people who voted for him are horrified enough by what they have wrought that they regret it and are willing to act differently and to speak out about their regret. The reality of this presidency and this administration will be determined in some part by whether or not Republican officials realize that their own survival as politicians depends not on sucking up to Trump, but by helping their constituents survive him. Strong evidence supporting all of those strikes against Trump so far, frankly. But this is one other thing to watch. If we really are now abandoning the free world and lining up instead with the world's dictatorships, and Trump is unwilling to even explain why, just watch. The American people are going to have some feelings about that too. Just watch.
She's a strong candidate for leader of the corruption party right there. We'll have to see. AP tells us, well, I'll just put it on the screen here so everybody can see it. AP tells us a news conference between Zelenskyy and Trump, Ukraine envoy, and Trump's Ukraine envoy is canceled at U.S. request. And so things are not going well, leaving Ukraine out of the peace deals there. U.S. and Ukraine revised mineral rights agreement amid tensions after President Zelenskyy of Ukraine rejected an initial offer from the Trump administration for access to Ukraine's mineral resources. The United States has now presented an improved draft agreement. Discussions are ongoing, with sources indicating that the new proposal aligns better with Ukrainian legislation, potentially making an agreement more feasible. This follows a period of tension between the leaders of both nations, highlighted by public disputes. Trump's calling him a dictator. Yeah, because he is a dictator, actually, truthfully speaking. But yeah, who's going to get the mining rights there? Like, BlackRock's getting the rebuilding contracts. This came out. U.S. stops arms sales to Ukraine. The United States has reportedly ceased all weapon sales to Ukraine, as confirmed by Roman Kosenko, head of Ukrainian Parliament's Defense Committee. This unexpected halt affects defense companies awaiting decisions on weapons transfers, leaving the reasons for the suspension unclear. And so that's Trump is leveraging it, of course, there to try to get their natural resources. White House reveals Trump's personal problem with Zelenskyy and issues furious demand of Ukrainian leader. In a stern ultimatum, Trump's national security advisor, Mike Waltz, do we have a video of that? Maybe. Mike Waltz detailed that what Zelenskyy needs to do to get back in Trump's good graces, including coming back to the negotiating table to negotiate a deal over Kiev's rich mineral resources. Ukrainian soldier removes U.S. flag in protest of Trump. Why the hell does he have a U.S. flag in the first place, dare I ask? Why is a Ukrainian soldier wearing a U.S. flag on his combat fatigues in a war with Russia? Like, what the? What's going on here, man? Donald Tusk, Polish Prime Minister, urges EU to use frozen Russian assets for Ukraine aid. Tusk has publicly advocated for the European Union to finance aid to Ukraine using approximately 210 billion euros of frozen Russian assets. He proposed this measure along with calls for strengthening air policing, enhancing Baltic security, and new fiscal rules to bolster EU defense capabilities. And then here's his post on the old X right there. Enough talking. It's time to act. Let's finance our aid for Ukraine from the Russian frozen assets. Let's strengthen air policing, the Baltic, and the EU borders with Ukraine. Let's swiftly adopt new physical rules to finance the EU security and defense now. That's all we got from the drama there in the Russian, Ukrainian, NATO, UK, United States. What do you even call it? Peace negotiations, resources grab. I guess the redevelopment contracts have already been handed out to BlackRock, so we have that to look forward to. Okay, moving on to the last section of the show here, and thank you to everybody for joining us on this Thursday edition of Weaponized News, as we're in at the hour and 45 minute, and quite a lively chat over there. Thank you, gentlemen, in the YouTube chat and the other channels as well. Last section here. Aardvark news. Of course, I usually try to wrap up the show with the saddest news, honestly, of the show. It's all pretty sad. The good news is we're downsizing. Bad news is Mark of the Beast is going to come upon us sooner than later, most likely. So, hey, we take what we can get here. But everybody, my favorite cartoon villain, it's still, well, I got to go with this guy because he is the finance minister, old Smoke Trick. Old Smoke Trick, and I did see this as a via Simon on the X. He shared Smoke Trick's post. My favorite cartoon aardvark villain had this to say today. He said, for 14 months in which we fought terrorism on all fronts with strength, bravery, and determination, we did not allow it to raise its head. As we feared, the mass release of terrorists and the ceasefire are interrupted. are interpreted by our enemies as weakness and are giving a tailwind to the terror forces who are threatening to once again blow up buses in city centers here, as they did during the second Intifada. Our response must be an immediate return to fighting and systematically crushing terrorism until it is destroyed in Gaza and Judea and Samaria. We will make sure that this will be the case. Well, terrorism is an ideology, and you can't destroy an idea, so it's going to be a never-ending war on terror. We knew this was the case because they stated as such in the phases of the quote ceasefire that as soon as the hostages were released, they were going to go back to full-on genocide. Essentially, it was stated all over the aardvark media. I don't know if our lying media said it, but I know I read it in Aardvark Times and other aardvark media's direct quotes from Netanyahu and Smotrich at the time when they said, oh, yes, we're having a ceasefire. And I said, there's not a ceasefire. This is total BS, as many others said as well. Here's old Walls. Let's see what he had to say. The heck is this guy anyway? I can't even keep track of them all. Walls, some kind of, who the hell is Walls? Let me look this up quickly. You guys know in the audience, who the hell is Walls again? What does he do besides? Who the hell's Walls? He's National Security Advisor. Geez, kind of think you'd remember that, Sam, at Weaponized News. Anyway, here's National Security Advisor Walls. Let's hear what he had to say about this whole situation.
As a veteran, as somebody who's been in combat, this war is horrific. And I think we've lost sight of that, of the literally thousands of people that are dying a day, families that are going without the next generation. And I find it kind of, frankly ridiculous. So many people in Washington that were just demanding, pounding the table for a ceasefire in Gaza are suddenly aghast that the president would demand one and both sides come to the table when it comes to Ukraine, a war that has been arguably far greater in scope and scale and far more dangerous in terms of global escalation to U.S. security.
Kind of a good point. Yeah, Barry, sorry, I didn't see that, but Barry said the Fed book feed went down. God only knows why, but the perils of censorship in the live stream and big techs, who knows? Who freaking knows why? Here's at CPAC, of course, Milei, the libertarian hero of Argentina fame, Argentinian president, gave Elon Musk a DOGE golden chainsaw today. Let's watch this short clip. So again, great rhetoric. I wish any of it was true. Big aardvark supporters there. There was an alleged bus bombing in aardvark land. Here's video of it. Aardvarks blame Hamas for 3 buses that exploded in South Tel Aviv. Here's a short clip of that. And, you know, who could have seen? We did not see this coming. And they're not famous for staging events either. Alleged bus bombings by Hamas in South Tel Aviv. This won't age well after Malay is impeached or imprisoned for rug pulling. I doubt that'll happen. Ruckus says, and Young says, I'll put that one up there. These new guys are just so American cool, aren't they? Yeah, I wish I could believe all of the hype, but then as Ruckus reminds us, which happened a few days ago, yeah, Malay just, you know, pumped and dumped. I think Thomas is going to talk about that actually tomorrow. He said he wants to talk about cryptocurrency a little bit and tell us about the scams in the crypto meme coins out there. So expect an analysis from Thomas from Alpha Mega Energy about such things tomorrow. Okay, so the evil Hamas blew up buses allegedly there in Tel Aviv. And then what do we get right on time? This from Simon again. Right on time, we get Prime Minister, Shadow President of America, Bibi, orders an offensive operation in the West Bank following the bus bombings. Isn't that quite convenient here? There you go. Translated from the phlegm in your throat language. You can see it right there, gibberish. Sorry to be offensive, but yeah. And so who could have, we did not see any of this coming. Who could have seen this coming? Get the bad terrorists. I mean, what else can you say, right? More of the theatrics here. Here is Musk and Malay on the CPAC stage, and of course, America eats it up. Let's watch this short clip.
This is the chainsaw for bureaucracy. Chainsaw! That's perfect. All right, I love it.
What do they say? The chainsaw for democracy? So, you know, as reported at the beginning of the show, widely reported, Cash Patel, FBI director, he's going to get the bad aardvarks, right? Right?
Donald Trump is elected. Imagine the efforts of the Israeli military and the Mossad combined with the maximum pressure of a new Trump administration against Iran.
Aaron's absolutely right. We should be side by side, and that can't happen unless we have an election that changes the commander-in-chief's seat. And when we are back in power with President Trump, you will see what we did with Israel and the prime minister and our special forces and their intel operation. We will be standing side by side with them. We will shut off the machinery that feeds money into Iran. We will no longer have 100 hostages still in captivity, Israeli and American and otherwise, by Hamas and Iran's Hezbollah mercenary forces. Donald Trump Trump rescued 50 hostages and detainees. That's more than every president before him combined. And I hope he wins on November 5th. And Aaron's right. We need America to wake up and prioritize Israel. And that is not what Kamala Harris is about. We need to bring home Americans and end this war, bring home Israelis, and make sure we stand by our #1 ally.
New FBI director seems pretty America first there. Doesn't he? Aardvarks enraged by Hamas monsters after coffin parade. It's watching the let's watch our the outrage here. It's also fake if you're following what's going on, but here it is.
על מפלצות החמאס. 4 ארונות יקירנו מחייבים אותנו יותר מתמיד להבטיח להישבע שמה שקרה ב7 באוקטובר לא יקרה שוב לעולם.
Aardvarks are outraged after Hamas paraded the coffins of 4 hostages in Gaza. Bibi vows vengeance against Hamas after release of dead captives. They said this was the plan a month ago, however friggin' long ago the fake ceasefire was. It's just so stupid. They never stopped. There never was a ceasefire. They've been killing people. The Aardvark land, Greater Aardvark land project continues. The ethnic cleansing continues. The genocide continues. It never stopped. They're just moving around to different locations. And all this is fake because this has been the plan the entire time, as we've reported here at Weaponized News. Jeez. But I guess we have to play along with the new FBI director, right? Okay, that's all we got for this Thursday edition of Weaponized News, closing it out at 2 hours. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And by the way, we do have that very good documentary, Beyond Treason, for those interested. It's older, but it's very well made, and it may bring up some old memories. And as we do on this channel, try to put some history behind current events, and you can connect the dots yourself and see where we've been and where we're going. Let me go over to the channels now and give some shout outs to whoever's on there. Over to the Odyssey, there's a few people. Barry on every channel. Thank you again, Barry. Much appreciated for your efforts to help us here. Highland, thank you for tuning in on the Odyssey. I don't see Bob today. We miss you, Bob. Bamsol, shout out to Bamsol on the Odyssey. I don't know what that means. 07 or some kind of like, maybe that's a big nose. I don't know what that is, but thank you for tuning in on the Odyssey. Over to the Rumble. Who we got on the Rumble? We got, I think that's Bob. I don't know how many personas Bob has, honestly, but Gunther is, I think that may be Bob as well. I'm not sure. Chloe, Barry, of course, Ruckus. Looks like we're missing Carrie today, and we read some stories that she gave me and gave her a shout out. Anyway, shout out to Carrie Pay again. Denver. Nexus on the Rumble. Thank you all you guys for tuning in. Can I find anything? Let's see. Denver says, ironically, U.S. cooed. Yeah. Ironically, they did coup them. They're in the Ukraine. People get fired up. Let's see. Freemasons are just a bunch of fun-loving guys who are like to hang out together and do 33 graffiti ruckus. There you go. So yeah, wow. I don't know what happened on the Rockfin. Quite an audience, most we ever had. I don't know. Shout out to Rockfin. Thank you guys for tuning in on Rumble and keeping that chat lively. Rockfin, I don't see that many people usually, but thank you guys for tuning in on the Rockfin. Who do we got there? Sean. Shout out to Sean. Hempcar. Hempcar says, great film. Poison Dust is good too. I tried showing Beyond Treason on campus. What did you do there, Hempcar? Hempcar says, I tried showing Beyond Treason on campus, but it was cut from the big screen, put in the library. On one guy said it was a conspiracy. I didn't think much. Well, thank you for your efforts anyway to try and spread the word. Hempcar says, rest in peace, Douglas Rourke. Trav there. Gene. Everyone knows Google is CIA cutout, but you still want us to use YouTube. I don't get it. Because, Gene, they are the backbone of the freaking internet, man. There's nothing we can do about it. These other platforms, and we're still trying to reach the normies out there, anybody that we can sway to have an open mind. And the audience is on YouTube, sadly, and Fedbook. Sad but true, because they have a monopoly on the internet. And I'm trying to get monetized so I don't have to beg you guys for money. I don't see any donations up here. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not begging for donations. I'm just saying if I could get monetized through them is why I'm trying to get you guys to help me out on the monopoly platforms that are essentially the backbone of the internet. I didn't build it. I didn't make the rules. That's just the way it is. I'm sorry. I don't like it any more than you do. But if you want to play the game, then you got to deal with these players, the rulers actually of the game. Sorry to say. That's the reality of my situation on the broadcasting end over here. Let's see. What else do we got? Quite a good audience over there on the Rockfin, surprisingly. Well, thank you guys for keeping the chat lively. He says, F YouTube makes it easier for them to F with us. What are you going to do, man? Honestly, what are you going to do? Okay, I just explained my position. Greg says, where's Simon? Simon is out with, Simon is out, and we've explained it. He's at a life-changing health event. And so hopefully he'll come back, but I don't know. You know what I mean? I honestly don't know. I still get some messages with him. Yeah, I don't think it's not bat disease related. It's something more serious than that. Anyway, is all I can say about it. But we do miss him, and he does message me from time to time here, and he is on X still. Let's see. Quite a chat going on the Rockfin. Thank you guys. D2T. What does he say? Is your username chatting amongst themselves? Hey, good chat over there. Thank you, gentlemen, all for tuning in. It is appreciated. Thank you for tuning in on the Rockfin. The bit shoot. Someday, some way, somehow. I know we need to. On the X, Welshman says maybe Al Gore could help out. He did invent the internet. Maybe we should lobby Al Gore about internet censorship. I don't know. I don't know how he'd feel about that, saying that it's arson and not climate change, and then showing the people arrested for arson. That might not go over very well with Al Gore. But besides that, maybe we can lobby Al Gore for to lay off the censorship. Some over there on the BitChute, thank you for tuning in on the BitChute. I do read your emails. It's sad that we're like old school technology on the BitChute still, but they let us stream and they don't censor, I guess. I don't know. Honestly, I don't believe data from any of these platforms, but hey, they at least never ban me, right? So at least they got that going for them. But shout out to the BitChute audience. Again, email your BitChute and tell them integrate a live chat feature that could help increase the audience and grow the Weaponized News Hounds community. Shout out to everybody on the YouTube. Quite a lively chat there. Thank you, gentlemen, for keeping that going. I'm sure that does. And everybody tune in to Ruckus. He is going over for the Boiler Room. I guess just search Boiler Room on the X and on the YouTube. I don't know what all his channels are. He needs to see. This will be part of our coordination, so we can do coordinated plugging to help the other alternative, the other independent. I don't even like alternative. How about just independent media outfits out there? But tune into Boiler Room. I would say X. I know I can find him on the X and see Ruckus there for his show tonight. As he does help promote Weaponized News on the YouTubes. And then I guess Fedbook, Facebook, LifeLock, whatever the hell it's called. I guess it's LifeLock. No, it's Meta. I don't know. They cut us off, Barry said. Thank you for telling me, Barry. Not much I could do about it. I got to go find out how I ran afoul of them. But shout out to you guys if you're watching. Who knows? Maybe. Sorry for getting cut off there. Who knows what their problem was. And that's it. That's all we got for this Thursday edition of Weaponized News. Again, we'll be back here tomorrow with Thomas from Alpha Mega Energy. He's going to give us a breakdown of crypto scams in the meme coin scamming era that we find ourselves in, and much more from Thomas from Alpha Mega Energy to report. And then, of course, current events as always. As always, do your own research. Peace, love, and liberty. Speak out and take action. Have a great rest of your Thursday evening, and we'll see you back here tomorrow. Here is Beyond Treason to play us out. And thank you, everybody, on all the channels for tuning in to Weaponized News.
Just 2 hours ago, Allied air forces began an attack on military targets in Iraq and Kuwait. These attacks continue as I speak. Ground forces are not engaged. This conflict started August 2nd when the dictator of Iraq invaded a small and helpless neighbor.
Just a short time ago, you heard the president announce that coalition forces of Operation Desert Storm have begun a large-scale ground operation against Iraqi forces inside Kuwait. This phase of the combined air, land, and sea campaign has been carefully planned to force Iraq out of Kuwait with the minimum number of casualties to Allied forces.
Indeed, analysis and computer modeling indicate that chemical agents released by aerial bombing did not reach U.S. troops in Saudi Arabia. However, we have identified potential fallout concerns in southern Iraq, particularly at the rear area chemical weapons storage bunker and pit area at the location known as Al-Qamishiyah.
Our operations are designed to best protect the lives of all the coalition forces by targeting Saddam's vast military arsenal. Initial reports from General Schwarzkopf are that our operations are proceeding according to plan.
We use protective overgarments, boots, masks. I don't think you have seen a single battle scene from the Desert Storm War where our troops were not in mock gear.
During our time over there, we started seeing individuals become ill with various symptoms. ranging from rashes all over their bodies or chronic explosive diarrhea, heavy bleeding accompanied with that, excruciating headaches, the bones and the joints started aching, and there were night sweats, and things only became worse as time progressed.
There's enough paperwork right now to prove there is a Gulf War illness, and there's certain medicines that control it, and that's all they're doing right now is controlling it for a few.
Iraq did use chemical and biological munitions.
They punched us with all these different vaccines supposedly to protect us. And
the threat of biological warfare is nothing new to the military, but the Persian Gulf War placed a special...
Knowing that some of these had never been tested on humans.
We're all forced to roll up our sleeves and pull down our pants and get shots in the gluteus and in the tricep muscles of our arms.
Before the Gulf War, I could run all day and leap tall buildings at a single bound. After the Gulf War, you couldn't walk a mile.
I know for a fact I was exposed to chemical, biological, radioactive materials, experimental vaccines, experimental investigational drugs, oil well fires.
I am considered a disabled veteran. I've got a 40% disability from the United States Department of Veteran Affairs for combat injuries caused by depleted uranium and other exposures.
It is more than a trial by fire. It is a rite of passage, a challenge to join the elite. And if you succeed, if you can master your fear, outsmart your enemy, and never yield even to yourself, you will be changed forever.
Yes, you may very well be changed forever, as thousands of our military have learned. This documentary is dedicated to those who served in the U.S. military for the right reasons, who wonder why they are not and never will be the same, why they are sick, and why military leaders, veterans leaders, and the three branches of our government do not assist them in getting medical care and compensation. The majority of our veterans only want to know what is wrong with them, why they became ill, and how they can be made well again. We will focus on the experiments conducted, the documents that support this experimentation, and what must be done to advance the cause of basic human rights for all active duty, Guard, Reserve, and veterans. For those of you who are not familiar with military experimentation, you are about to get a lesson in history. For to experiment without consent is truly beyond treason.
Bomb away.
Atomic veterans include members of the United States Armed Forces who were exposed to ionizing radiation from atomic and nuclear weapons testing during the period beginning with the Trinity blast of July 16, 1945 at Alamogordo, New Mexico, the U.S. cleanup of Nagasaki, Hiroshima, the 235 atmospheric and nuclear weapons test in the Pacific, and Nevada test sites ending with the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty of 1963. The National Association of Atomic Veterans recognizes that civilians, as well as military personnel, were exposed to harmful nuclear material radiation, and that many of these personnel have since died as a result of radiation-induced illnesses. Over 382,000 servicemen, as well as civilian personnel, took part in a variety of tests during the Cold War period, when the Atomic Energy Commission, working in conjunction with the Department of Defense, had troops participate in and witness the detonation at various Pacific and Nevada test areas. Most detonations were larger than and emitted considerably more deadly radiation than the two weapons which were employed against Japan at the end of World War II. During the test, various government agencies and departments were interested in learning about the various effects of atomic and nuclear weapons, as well as how these weapons affected the immediate performance of military personnel and equipment. Troops, ships, and various types of equipment were placed from several hundred yards to several miles from the center of each detonation. On many occasions, military personnel performed maneuvers in and around ground zeros without any protective clothing or respiratory devices. Since the end of these tests in 1963, there has been no government-sponsored medical surveillance of test participants, nor any effort to locate these individuals to warn them of potential health threats. Project MKUltra was the code name for the CIA mind control research program lasting from the 1950s to the 1970s. In 1964, the project was renamed MK Search. MKUltra was started on the order of CIA Director Allen Dulles in April of 1953, largely in response to alleged Soviet, Chinese, and North Korean mind control techniques on U.S. prisoners of war in Korea. Because most of the MKUltra records were deliberately destroyed in 1972 by order of then-Director Richard Helms, it is impossible to have a complete understanding of the more than 160 individually funded research projects sponsored by MKUltra and the related CIA programs. Experiments included radiation, LSD. Experiments included dosing CIA employees, military personnel, other government agents, prostitutes, mental patients, and members of the general public with LSD to study their reactions, usually without the subject's knowledge. In the summer of 1975, congressional hearings and the Rockefeller Commission report revealed to the public for the first time that the CIA and the DOD had conducted experiments on both consenting and unwitting human subjects as part of an extensive program to influence and control human behavior through the use of psychoactive drugs such as LSD, mescaline, and other chemical, biological, and psychological means. The report states that no official records were kept regarding the deaths or illnesses of experimentees. A U.S. Army project that ended over 25 years ago is now the subject of much scrutiny. Project Whitecoat was the Army's code name for a series of germ warfare studies conducted on about 2,300 Seventh-day Adventist servicemen from 1954 to 1973. Now the Army is investigating the long-term effects that the project may have had on its participants. They center on the Seventh-day Adventist Church and the role that it played in the U.S. Army's development of chemical and biological weapons of mass destruction. Under strict secrecy, the U.S. Army established Camp Detrick outside of Frederick, Maryland during World War II for the sole purpose of developing germ weapons. The program was controlled by the Army's Chemical Warfare Service, a branch that had worked with gas weapons that were used by the U.S. in World War I. The Army began to study both the offensive and defensive aspects of biowarfare. In 1952, the Army Medical Corps stationed a medical unit in Fort Detrick, and in 1954 this unit began using Seventh-day Adventist soldiers in its research, presumably in the defensive aspects of germ warfare. Fort Detrick was home to what became known as Project Whitecoat, the code name for the group of Seventh-day Adventist soldiers who were used as human guinea pigs in biowarfare research. Agent Orange was the code name for an herbicide developed for the military primarily for use in tropical climates. The purpose of the product was to deny an enemy cover and concealment in dense terrain by defoliating trees and shrubbery where the enemy could hide. The product Agent Orange was a code name for the orange band that was used to mark the drums in which it was stored. The product was tested in Vietnam in the early 1960s and used at the height of the war in 1967 and 1968. Agent Orange was a 50-50 mix of two chemicals known conventionally as 2,4-D and 2,4,5-T. The combined product was mixed with kerosene or diesel fuel and dispersed by aircraft, vehicle, and hand spraying. An estimated 19 million gallons of Agent Orange was used in South Vietnam during the war, potentially affecting 2.5 million Vietnam veterans. On May 5, 1990, Admiral E.R. Zumwalt, Jr., in a classified report, submitted the following: Report to the Secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs on the association between adverse health effects and exposure to Agent Orange. In that report, he concluded that it was at least as likely as not that the exposure to Agent Orange caused numerous life-threatening, debilitating, and deforming diseases. BZ is the Army's designation of the psychedelic chemical known in military circles as Agent Buzz, or by the Army's chemical code designation of EA-2277. BZ was aerosolized, sprayed from aircraft, and utilized in conventional bombs. The effect of BZ was that it was psychotropic in nature. Over 362 human subjects were experimented upon at Dugway Proving Ground in Utah in 1964 under the code name of Project Dork. Most records of military experiments involving BZ are still classified and unable to be obtained even through the Freedom of Information Act. BZ was an incapacitating agent with paranormal hallucinations that lasted for not just days, but for weeks and months. You may have seen the movie Jacob's Ladder, which depicts effects from the mist sprayed over our military by our Department of Defense. To this date, the Department of Defense continues to deny and stonewall the existence of a Gulf War illness. The Gulf War illness is a cumulative effect of exposure to depleted uranium, chemicals, biologicals, vaccines, petrochemical agents, and parasite diseases such as leishmaniasis. Few people are aware that the Gulf War was yet another example of the Department of Defense's intentional exposure of its own troops to its own deadly weapons. From 1984 through 1989, the U.S. government, with full knowledge of the CDC and the Department of Commerce, sold and transferred to Iraq $4 billion worth of deadly chemical agents, deadly biological agents such as anthrax, Clostridium botulinum, and West Nile fever virus. As a result of the first Gulf War, hundreds of thousands of our military are now sick, and many have died. The official figure of those who served in Operation Desert Shield and Storm is 697,000. The Department of Defense has now declared nearly 250,000 of those troops as permanently disabled. The official position of the Department of Defense is that there are no classified or unclassified documents that exist to prove that chemicals and biologicals were used in the first Gulf War. But in only a 100-hour war, when less than 150 troops died, how do we explain the morbidity and mortality rate of nearly 450,000 of our servicemen and women?
At the time that the Gulf War started, I was the nuclear medical sciences officer, intelligence and covering everything, special operations officer, mobilization officer, training officer for 330th Medical Brigade. That's the largest medical brigade in the U.S. Army. It's an Army Reserve Medical Command under a one-star general.
Dr. Doug Rocky is a U.S. Army health physicist and nuclear medical sciences officer. Dr. Rocky has expertise in nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare operations, microwave radiation, emergency response, decontamination, and battlefield cleanup.
We were the super garbage men. We had to clean up the messes. We had to identify the messes. We had to collect all the garbage. We had to provide the on-site medical care. It's a lot. All the Iraqi equipment, a lot of U.S. equipment, contains radiological components. When that equipment was blowing up, the radiological materials were released into the environment, exposing and contaminating. And then to top it all off, we used uranium munitions. known as depleted uranium. They've been used back in 1973 by the Israelis against the Egyptians, but during Gulf War I, Desert Shield and Desert Storm, we took it to a totally new level. The use of radioactive materials on the battlefield. Deliberately taken tons and tons, actually over 350 tons of solid radioactive materials, and dispersed it across Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq. Taking our radioactive waste and throw it in somebody else's backyard. I am considered a disabled veteran. I've got a 40% disability from the United States Department of Veteran Affairs for combat injuries caused by depleted uranium and other exposures.
Lieutenant Colonel John Marks is an A-10 pilot attached to the 303rd Fighter Squadron stationed at Whiteman Air Force Base, Missouri.
The reason it used depleted uranium is it's a very dense, heavy metal, and it's able to penetrate the most armor of any type of material used. It is a very minor amount of radioactivity, but it's not anything that, as long as it's in its bullet form, it can be stored, and it's not any type of hazardous material. Once it hits a vehicle and vaporizes, then it becomes more of a hazardous material that you have to have special handling of that type of thing. But in its normal bullet form, it's not hazardous and, because of the depleted uranium. It is highly effective against armor.
We got direct memorandum from the Department of the Army and other Department of Defense officials specifically telling us that not only were uranium munitions a health threat, they were a serious health threat, the contamination. We got direct warnings, famed Los Alamos memorandum, that to make sure and write a report so that uranium munitions can always be used because there's direct concern about the health and environmental effects. We had the warnings. We also had the responsibility to put together all the decontamination guidelines and also what's called the Combat Lifesaver Program. So myself and my team wrote that, which has now been adopted by the Army and is used every day by the Army.
Battlefields and fighting are by nature hazardous to your health. Some hazards are easy to identify and well understood. Soldiers recognize the serious hazards presented by incoming artillery shells and bullets and take appropriate actions. However, some lesser hazards from new technological applications are not so well known and recognized. One of these newer applications is the use of depleted uranium in munitions and equipment armor. Depleted uranium is obtained from uranium ore, which is found throughout the world. In the United States, this ore is mined in New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, and Arizona. Uranium ore contains 3 isotopes. By weight, 99.28%, which is uranium-238, 0.71%, which is uranium-235, and 0.0058%, which is uranium-234. Of these 3 isotopes, uranium-235 and uranium-234 are used for nuclear fuel and weapons. Uranium-238 becomes depleted uranium.
This is an aluminum model of 1 DU tank round. This round would be fired by an Abrams tank. If it was actually uranium rather than aluminum, it would be over 10 pounds of solid uranium. What happens, it moves extremely high velocity. The minute it leaves the bore of the gun, it catches fire. So this rod is a burning rod of uranium. It impacts tremendous forces, unbelievable forces, over this very small diameter. And it's like a blowtorch with tremendous forces that punches right through. Now, as this breaks through and goes into anything, it can be steel, concrete, sandbag bunkers, wood, or anything. Uranium itself is soft. So you have parts of the fragments of uranium breaks off as it enters and goes through. The uranium rod emits alpha, beta, and gamma radiation and X-ray radiation. The alpha particle is a 4.15 MeV particle. That's 4.15 million electron volts. Now, the intercellular voltage, the voltage that your cell operates biologically, is 10 electron volts. So when that cell is bombarded by an alpha particle at 4.5 million electron volts, it doesn't have a good day. We have all kinds of other problems. We have the beta particle and the gamma rays, the X-rays. Now we've actually measured the ionizing radiation emissions from a DU rod within, say, 4 to 6 inches at over 300 millirems per hour. Now that radiation is continuous. So you get a fragment of DU into your body that's emitting at over 300 millirems per hour. Or if you're holding the rod in your hand, it's over 300 millirems per hour. And if you got the fragment, then you got the alpha particle in there, which is an extremely hot particle, 4.15 MeV. And we're looking at what we measured over 10,000 counts per minute, 10,000 disintegrations per minute, 10,000 alpha particles per minute. In fact, in May of 2002, the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs reported that over 160,000 troops that participated in Gulf War I, the period August of 1990 through the fall of 1991, basically October and November 1991, have been classified as disabled from anywhere from 10 to 100%. Now, my own disability didn't come about until after May of 2002. The count right now is somewhere close to 200,000. When we look at all the troops that have gone into the Persian Gulf region between August of 1990 and May of 2002, when the last formal report was written, the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs formally acknowledges over 221,000 individuals are labeled as permanently disabled, and over 10,000 are deceased that had service connection disabilities. There's a big difference. There's a 60,000 increase in individuals that are disabled amongst those that served after the fall of 1991. That disability is only due to residual exposures and immunizations that were continued to be given, because there was no active combat. There was no active maneuvering. So what's happened? Well, what happened prior to Gulf War I is pre-deployment health physical assessments were not given. And at the completion of Gulf War I, post-deployment health physical assessments were not given, even though we specifically requested it. In my own case, when I came back to get released after completing special projects, I said I was exposed to these. We need to do these tests. And they refused to do them.
I've been a staff scientist at 2 nuclear weapons laboratories, 5 years at the Lawrence Berkeley Lab, where the Manhattan Project started, and 2 years at the Lawrence Livermore Lab.
Lorraine Murray is an independent scientist who specializes in radiation issues. Her degrees include BS in geology, master's degree in Near Eastern Studies, and has pursued doctoral studies in geosciences at the University of California, Davis.
For the past 5 years, my research is focused on the damaging effects of low-level radiation. The history of depleted uranium goes back to a 1943 declassified memo known as the Groves Memorandum. In this memo, depleted uranium is recommended for development as a poison gas warfare weapon. According to the United Nations Human Rights Commission, which has declared depleted uranium illegal, approximately 17 countries have purchased depleted uranium weaponry from the United States government.
In December of 1992, the director of the United States Army Environmental Policy Institute was ordered to figure out ways to reduce the toxicity of uranium munitions by Assistant Secretary of the Army Walker. In 1995, the director of AEPI told the Secretary of the Army, we can't reduce the toxicity. It's not possible. The United States Army Common Task Training states very specifically, uranium contamination will make food and water unusable. And yet we use it in combat all over the place. That's why the United Nations Subcommission on Human Rights had ruled that uranium munitions were an illegal weapon, because they're indiscriminate. They can't be cleaned up, and they last for eternity.
The amount of depleted uranium used in the first Gulf War in 1991 is approximately 340 tons, and this was admitted by the U.S. government. In Yugoslavia, Lord Robertson, who was the head of NATO in 1998, admitted in the public media that the United States had used depleted uranium warheads in every missile used in that invasion. It's estimated that at least 1,000 tons of depleted uranium was used in Afghanistan in 2001, and approximately 2,400 tons were used in Iraq in 2003.
The United Nations Subcommission on Human Rights, because of the fact that uranium contamination makes food and water unusable, has a permanent effect and can't be cleaned up and affects not only combatants but non-combatants. It's been ruled an illegal weapon. It was years ago. That's common sense.
We all know that the United States falsely accused Iraq of possessing weapons of mass destruction in 2003. In fact, the United States invaded Iraq and used weapons of mass destruction against the Iraqis. Depleted uranium has a half-life of 4.5 billion years. If we had a pound of depleted uranium now, in 4.5 billion years, there would only be half a pound left. This means that the Middle East and Central Asia and Yugoslavia are contaminated forever.
We're 1st Platoon Charlie Company, and we were part of Operation Iraqi Freedom.
On the battlefield, you gotta have an officer who can think on his feet. We had that.
Lieutenant Walker came to us from ROTC.
It didn't matter if we were in training or in combat. He was right there with us.
He had confidence and dedication.
And wherever he goes, we go.
I'm a military brat. My father spent 24 years in the Army.
Staff Sergeant Bob Jones is a veteran of Desert Storm, a former Army Ranger now retired and disabled due to Gulf War illness. Not only is Bob ill, but his entire immediate family is affected as they all suffer from mycoplasma fermentans incognitus.
During the air campaign, we targeted their chemical, biological, and nuclear facilities. So we were exposed to chemicals, biologicals, nuclear radiation in the form of depleted uranium and also direct enriched uranium, or EU, from those nuclear facilities that were bombed and targeted. And many of the coalition, especially guys on the front line, such as my unit and others like us, were in the area of exposure from the fallouts of the coalition bombings. And although this information became widely known as early as 1994 through testimony and release of GAO reports that showed that the meteorological data supported the fact that the downwind plume or fallout from the bombings drifted over a large number of the troops that were forward positioned.
The U.S. military personnel during Gulf War I, just like during the Balkans and in Gulf War II now, were not adequately protected from all of the exposures they had. We know from first-hand experience that the M40 series mask, as confirmed by the United States General Accounting Office, is defective. We know that it leaks when you move your head. We know that none of those, either the M17 series or the M40 series, provides protection against toxic industrial chemicals. No. Were they adequately protected? Absolutely not. Was my team adequately protected? Absolutely not. We wore the respirators, and we got sick. Now, what happened? What we confirmed and what we saw during Gulf War I and when I did the research as director of the Depleted Uranium Project, that DU round comes down and it breaks up. We have the spalling, then we have the fire. And we create uranium oxides of different types. Some in the ball game the size of cigarette ash and marbles on down to 0.1 micron. This has always been known. When I talked to senior Manhattan Project scientists that were expert particle physicists, they said, hey, we knew uranium on when it breaks up like this was going to be down in the 0.1, 0.2 micron range. No doubt about it. The gas mask, the respiratory protection issued to the troops, there's no way it can protect against inhalation. Well, that's what happened to myself and my team. We wore the respiratory protection during Gulf War I, inhaled it, and got sick. We wore the respiratory protection when we were doing the depleted uranium project research at Nevada test site. U.S. Department of Energy approved respirators. And we could smell and taste the uranium through the filters.
During our time over there, we started seeing individuals become ill with various symptoms ranging from rashes all over their bodies or certain areas of their bodies to having chronic explosive diarrhea, which in some cases was heavy bleeding accompanied with that. We had, and I can speak for myself on this as well, excruciating headaches. The bones and the joints started aching, and there were night sweats, and you know, things only became worse as time progressed. And my unit in particular was deactivated after our return back to Germany in May of 1991. Some of the other individuals started showing up with other diseases, which included several types of cancers, and the neurological problems that many of us suffer from, and degenerative joint bone disease, spine disease, and other manifestations of illnesses that were at that time still unexplained, that caused them to no longer be able to perform their duties as a soldier as they had for so many years. And some of us that conceived children after the war, and I know of at least 2 individuals where their children were born perfectly healthy according to the hospital, and within 6 months after their return, their hearts literally exploded in their chests.
In the civilian population in southern Iraq, the Iraqi doctors are reporting very large increases in cancer, leukemia, diabetes, immune system disorders, and of course birth defects in the newborns. The babies are born without a brain, without eyes, without legs, or without arms. Sometimes the baby is born with a cyclops eye, just one eye in the forehead. And each year, these birth defects are more and more severe. Pediatricians now in southern Iraq are reporting that some babies are born without heads or arms. They're just pieces of flesh. Because Iraq is in an arid region with severe dust storms annually, this remobilizes the depleted uranium on the ground and on the battlefields. And so the civilian population will continue to be exposed to increasing levels of DU internally. The severity of the birth defects and radiation-related diseases will increase over time. In fact, depleted uranium is a death sentence.
Individuals are depleted uranium casualties, whether they're civilians or combatants. Doesn't matter where they were, whether they were exposed during manufacturing processes, testing processes, or combat use. One of the things that we're starting to see, we saw the respiratory problems right off the bat. That was predicted by the Groves Memorandum, totally confirmed by my own physicians and totally documented in my VA medical records. Then we saw the rashes. Well, what we're having is we have the particulate irritation damage, we have the chemical toxicity damage, and then we have the radiological damage, which is the result of the cancers and the tumors. All of the birth defects, they absolutely confirm chromosomal aberrations from the ionizing radiation damage to the cells and the tissues. Neurological problems, rashes, cataracts, kidney problems. Your life is messed up. As said in the Groves Memorandum, it's going to cause all these health problems, and there is no medical care and treatment. You can't reverse radiation exposure damage to the body.
This represents a depleted uranium particle. The styrofoam ball in the center is millions of atoms of uranium, and the toothpicks are the tracks of the alpha particles that are released from the uranium nucleus. When these pass through the cell, they release tremendous amounts of energy, which cause the cell processes, enzymes, and hormones to malfunction. When there are billions of these distributed throughout a body, they cause diseases in many ways, and that's why Gulf War syndrome is a complex system of diseases caused by malfunctioning of all of the parts and the processes in a cell that make life possible.
Some of the soldiers were losing their mind.
Dennis Kine served in the U.S. Army until 2003 with the rank of Specialist D4. A graduate of the Nuclear, Biological, and Chemical School, today he serves as a veterans advocate. Kine also graduated magna cum laude from San Jose State University.
We bombed on January 17th. We started bombing. We bombed for 45 days. And after 45 days, February 28th, we started a ground invasion, which is said to be the most victorious military operation ever in the history of mankind. Well, it wasn't victorious. We got sick immediately. On March 1st, Lieutenant Colonel Ziem issued a memorandum that stated specifically, we better have somebody advocate for the use of this weaponry, otherwise the environmentalists might get upset. On March 3rd, they called a ceasefire. So from the date Lieutenant Colonel Ziem's memorandum was issued, 2 days later they called a ceasefire on March 3rd, 1991, and on March 8th, another memorandum was issued saying all soldiers in this area should be protected by wearing their safety clothing. So in 1 week's time, they had 2 memorandums and a ceasefire that pretty much indicated why all the soldiers were sick.
If the American people could only wake up and see what is happening, you know, this is a tragedy. You know, we're not the first victims of war. In many cases, our wounds are invisible. You know, we carry them inside of us, and it's only through specialty testing and specialty diagnostic testing that you can isolate and find these particular mechanisms involved, whether they be chemical, biological, nuclear, or other agents that would cause what has become known as Gulf War illness, Gulf War syndrome, Persian Gulf illness. There's no such thing as a syndrome. This is an overlapping combination of toxic and other exposures that varied from individual to individual depending on where they were at, what they were exposed to, and how long and the duration of their exposures.
In a cubic meter of air, there are 1 billion particles, a tenth of a micron, in diameter. An ordinary man breathes 28 cubic meters of air a day. And for that reason, our soldiers, internally contaminated to depleted uranium, have billions of particles of depleted uranium distributed throughout their bodies. DU can be found in all parts of the body. It has been reported in the bladder, in the semen, in the bone marrow, in the lungs, and the brain. Because of the contamination of the semen from the depleted uranium particles, soldiers returning internally contaminate their wives and their partners.
It wasn't so much my illness, but my family was also ill, and they required medical attention and medical treatment, real medical treatment. I retired in June of last year, June 2003. As soon as I retired, my family was completely dropped from the military medical system. In other words, we were enrolled at the Womack Family Practice, and as soon as I retired, we were dropped like a hot potato. And although I begged and pleaded, they would not let my family re-enroll back into the Womack Family Practice. So in essence, my wife was completely cut off from all the medications and all the treatment that she had received for the past 7 years that dealt extensively, because she was also a victim of these exposures that I brought home from the Gulf War, from my equipment and from my personal exposure, as I alluded to earlier, from bodily contact, and that to me is the greatest travesty. I just can't imagine how a nation, not only will they take care of their veterans that have returned from war, but you have innocent family members and loved ones that never put their hand up and swore allegiance to fight and defend the Constitution of the United States, and they get kicked to the curb and nobody cares.
When you get these health effects, you have to prove to the United States Department of Veteran Affairs that you were exposed. And then you have to prove that the health effects that you're seeing were caused by the exposures you have. But it's very difficult to do when the medical records have been destroyed, the personnel files have been missing or destroyed. And when you got senior Department of Defense officials continue to state, well, none of these guys are sick. None of these guys are dead. Why don't you ask Sue Reardon someday about Terry? Why don't you ask Sue Sitten someday about John? Or Frank Zuley? Or Mr. Kiefer? Ask his granddaughter why she'll never enjoy her grandfather. and look at the Iraqi women and children and men. Ask the question yourself. Is winning a battle but contaminate air, water, soil, and food worth the life of your son and daughter? Is it worth the life of the child? Not just those that are alive, but those that are going to be exposed because the contamination remains there for eternity. It's real simple. I was tasked to clean up the uranium munitions by name, by order, during Gulf War I. I was assigned as the depleted uranium project director. I did the research. I prepared the programs. I wrote the regulations for management. I wrote the procedures for management. And I got sick because I served my nation. And I was discarded. I was abandoned.
Depleted uranium weapons are designed not only to kill the enemy, devastate the civilian population for generations to come, but DU weapons also destroy the environment and damage the economy. In 1996, the United Nations passed a resolution that made DU illegal under international law. In order to protect themselves and continue the illegal usage of depleted uranium, the United States government has co-opted the International Criminal Court, thus protecting certain individuals from war crimes charges. Unbeknownst to most U.S. citizens and unreported in the U.S. media was the International Criminal Tribunal for Afghanistan held at Tokyo, Japan, December 15th of 2002. Those meetings lasted for over a year. The initial complaint presented for the tribunal charges George Bush with 31 counts of war crimes, violations of the Geneva Conventions and other crimes against peace, and the war on Afghanistan. In addition to the original 31 war crime charges against George Bush, the judges and tribunal recommended 2 additional charges. Number 1, Bush knowingly used depleted uranium on the battlefield against his own troops, and number 2, that it was, in fact, a crime against the environment.
The United States Army, USAMR at Fort Detrick, Maryland, sold and provided the chemical and biological munitions and anthrax spores to Iraq. That's totally confirmed in the Regal Commission report written by James Toot and the subject of a made-for-TV movie called Thanks to a Grateful Nation that starred Ted Danson and Mark Helgenberger.
The United States has a long-standing involvement in the sale of weapons to third world countries. Donald Rumsfeld, a private citizen, met with Saddam Hussein as a political envoy of the Reagan administration on December 20th of 1983. It is a little-known fact that he was also president and CEO of the G.D. Cyril Pharmaceutical Company. According to Howard Teicher, author of Twin Pillars to Desert Storm, he and Rumsfeld traveled to Baghdad on December 17th in order to lay the groundwork for the presumption of full diplomatic relations between the United States and Iraq. Prior to that time, Iraq was on the known list of terrorist countries. Iraq invaded Iran in September of 1980. It is important to note that the ban on the sale of weapons was in force until 1982, when it was lifted with the strong objections from Congress. The U.S. began the transfer of helicopters to Iraq in December of 1982. In 1983, Banco Nazionale del Lavoro of Italy and its branch in Atlanta began to funnel $5 billion in unreported loans to Iraq with the blessing and official approval of the U.S. government. The Reagan administration began secretly allowing Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Egypt to transfer United States weapons, including howitzers, Huey helicopters, and bombs to Iraq. These shipments violated the Arms Export Control Act. From 1985 through 1989, the Department of Commerce licensed 70 biological exports to Iraq, including approximately 21 batches of lethal strains of anthrax, shipments of weapons-grade Clostridium botulinum, and West Nile fever virus. In April of 1988, the Department of Commerce approved the shipment of chemicals used in the manufacture of mustard gas. The U.S., with the approval of the CDC and the Department of Commerce, armed Iraq illegally from 1985 through 1989.
We knew from the fact that Iraq had got chemical and biological weapons from the United States and used them on Iraqi Kurds and on the Iranians, that they didn't have in their possession, they would probably use them. We knew that all the toxic industrial chemicals that we use in the military, when we move a military, go into combat, were going to affect everybody. We knew that all of the other weapon systems we had have a horrible health and environmental effect on the battlefield. That's history. And with all the background all of us had, both within the military and within academia, it was very easy for us to understand and predict what was going to happen. During the period of 1990 and 1991, we made a conscious decision, and this decision was a decision made between General Powell, General Schwarzkopf, General Horner, and Secretary Cheney to blow up Iraq's chemical and biological stockpiles in place. We also decided to blow up their nuclear reactors in place. This is all confirmed in Schwarzkopf's autobiography, It Doesn't Take a Hero, on page 390. For somebody who wants to look, you can go find out for yourself. At that time, we warned everybody that these exposures, downwind exposures, were going to have a disastrous effect on U.S. military personnel, on coalition personnel, on Iraqi personnel, and on the civilians and non-combatants in the region. That warning was ignored.
The average military person had no knowledge that the United States was secretly and illegally continuing to sell weapons of mass destruction to Iraq just prior to Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm. It is important to note that these biological materials were not attenuated or weakened and were capable of reproduction, thus illustrating these biological agents were not for research, but for the purpose of weaponization. Not even the military medical personnel tasked with treating the wounded on the battlefield had any training regarding a biological or chemical casualty. According to Senate Report 103-900, by the time of the invasion of Kuwait, Iraq had developed biological weapons. The Regal Report states that Iraq's biological warfare program was the most advanced in the Arab world. There is substantial evidence to suggest that the Iraqi military used the Soviet doctrine of multiple chemicals and multiple biologicals against our troops. This serves to confuse the diagnostic and treatment process and would account for the wide variety of symptoms displayed by Gulf War veterans.
Most of the guys that I served with are either severely disabled or dead due to the fact of their exposure to the different elements that were involved.
Michael is a veteran of Desert Storm and served in the area of special operations. Because of fear of reprisal by the Department of Defense or loss of his veterans' benefits, he has requested that we alter his voice and image.
One memory that sticks very clearly in my mind is the chemical alarms. At least once a day, we'd have a chemical alarm go off. And after a while, we learned to pay attention to them because we were told it was a malfunction. They would try and tell us that either it had blown paint on it, some fumes from something that had been painted nearby had been blown on it, and that set it off, and so on and so forth. And it makes me wonder, they claim that no chemical weapons were used, but I have every reason to believe that now, in retrospect, it's so sad that you trust them so much that when the chemical alarm goes off, and most normal human beings would go, well, I don't care what you say, that chemical alarm goes off, I'm going to take precautions. But you are so indoctrinated in the fact that, oh, well, we're here to look out for you, we're going to take care of you, that when the chemical alarms go off, you just sit there and continue eating or reading or whatever it was you were doing.
On a number of occasions, chemical alarms went off, and we were ordered not to basically respond to them or report them or write down statistics or even study the environment we were in, which is normally what an NBC person would do. Once an alarm goes off, you start putting, testing things around to see if there's anything happening. At the first call of an alarm, we would be told a number of different things, like it was the gasoline setting it off, or it was the oil well fires burning that was setting it off, or it could have been anything other than an actual chemical or biological agent. Surely wasn't. Don't worry about it, soldier. You'll be okay.
We had alarms going off, chemical alarms, and there were several occasions where we had to go into full mop gear in the middle of the night, or especially in the middle of the night. It's unbelievable that we had all this equipment that had been calibrated and sent over there prior to the war, and we had set out monitors in the perimeter and in the area to detect any kind of chemical activity. However, what is of significant and monumental importance is the fact that we had no biological detection capabilities over there whatsoever. And this all relates back to the fact that we destroyed their chemical biological sites and also the bunker complexes, not to mention the big one in Camisea, which is the only one that got any kind of real attention due to the fact that an individual or several individuals happened to film the contents of that bunker complex. The order was given to blow the place up rather than the normal procedures when you find a place like that magnitude holding the contents that it did. There were other means of disposal. The area was secured, and what surprises me is the fact that we received no warning. No one was instructed to get into any kind of mop gear or any type of chemical protective posture, although it's questionable whether it would have helped anyway.
Well, we were issued, MOP suit, military occupational protective posture is what MOP stands for. MOP suits, we were issued them, but they were useless to us after the first 3 days after we opened the package. So you get in country, they issue you a brand new suit, it's got a charcoal filter in it, but the minute that package has been opened and that suit has been liberated, that suit is useless. You can't keep putting it on and taking it off.
The Department of Defense has long touted that American troops are the best prepared, trained, and equipped in the world. Unfortunately, the equipment that was meant to save their lives may very well have cost them their health in Desert Shield and Storm. Information has now been obtained that proves that the chemical suits sold to the Department of Defense during 1989 were in fact useless. Isratex, a company from Raynell, West Virginia, sold nearly 800,000 defective suits that later proved to be full of tears, holes, and poor stitching. One hole can mean the life or death of a soldier during a chemical exposure. The company subsequently filed for bankruptcy, and its owners have never faced accountability for their actions. The Camisea bunker complex is estimated to be 100 bunkers and 60 warehouses, each the size of a super Walmart. The destruction of Camisea was not even discussed until June of 1996, when it was addressed by Senator Specter at the Senate Armed Forces hearing. General Schwarzkopf said the following.
As I stated, the first time I ever heard of Camisea was in 1996 when it was first announced by the Department of Defense, and nobody was more surprised than I was.
A little later in his testimony, General Schwarzkopf apparently contradicted himself when he said the following.
I remember General Franks came to me, and I assume it was Camisea he was talking about at the time, because it was about the same time frame, and talked about this huge ammunition dump that they had found with literally tons and tons and tons of ammunition in it, and there was no way they could possibly retrograde it, and I challenged him on that, and he convinced me that no, they couldn't retrograde it, and therefore they were going to destroy it in place. I said, fine. Now that's Camisea. From what I heard about the size of the bunker that Franks was talking about and the others that they blew up, these were huge bunkers with crates and crates and crates and crates of ammunition in them, and I can only assume that they looked, they either didn't recognize them or didn't see them at the time. We were under pressure to withdraw, and under the pressures of withdrawal, we did destroy everything we could so that the Iraqis couldn't fall back in on it and use it in some other war against us.
General Schwarzkopf just stated that he was concerned about the Iraqis regaining control of the ammunition that was contained at the Camisea ammunition depot. However, several individuals have come forward with other reasons as to why the bunker depots were hastily destroyed.
I'm Dan Topolsky. I was the Nuclear, Biological, and Chemical Defense NCO for B Company, 37th Engineer Battalion. I was on the Camisea Bunker Complex mission.
Sergeant Topolsky was one of the nuclear, biological, and chemical non-commissioned officers in charge of identifying munitions at Camisea Bunker Complex in Iraq.
I felt betrayed. I felt like we had been sold out for dollars when I saw what I saw inside those bunkers.
Even though I had 40-some years in military service, if you were to bring in a bunch of ammunition and pile it up in front of me, and one of them was a 122-millimeter rocket with chemicals in it, I would not be able to tell you that that had chemicals in it, particularly if it was an Iraqi rocket with Arabic writing on it or something of the sort. We identify ours when we had them in a very specific way by color coding. I don't have the slightest idea what the Arabs did.
General Schwarzkopf stated that we identified our weapons by color coding. According to Sergeant Topolsky, the colored bands identified biological and chemical munitions inside the Camisea Bunker Complex. According to Sergeant Topolsky, the yellow or purple bands indicate chemical munitions. The green bands represent biological munitions. General Schwarzkopf also said he could not identify munitions, especially if they had Iraqi markings on them. You will also note these munitions were plainly marked in English and indicated these munitions were supplied by countries like Jordan, England, Russia, as well as the United States of America. According to the 1972 Geneva Convention, weapons of mass destruction are illegal. Therefore, according to Sergeant Dan Topolsky, it is very likely that these munitions were destroyed not so much to prevent Saddam Hussein from regaining control of them, but to destroy the evidence of these countries breaking international law.
The 37th Engineer Battalion, way back in the air campaign, was ordered by our battalion commander not to wear our protective overgarments unless specifically told to do so. My company pretty much ignored that order because my company commander supported me when I said that that was dead wrong, and he's going to wind up with a dead company if he listens to it. Now, a lot of the other companies in the battalion didn't do that.
On April 17, 1997, General Colin Powell testified before the same Senate panel, and as was the case of General Schwarzkopf, he was not required to take the oath to tell the truth. In regard to the chemical mop suit, General Powell said the following.
We used protective overgarments, boots, masks. I don't think you have seen a single battle scene from the Desert Storm War where our troops were not in mop gear.
Well, the Department of Defense officials continue to lie about what we know and what happened during Gulf War I. But it's real simple. The chemical agent alarms went off. There was no other reason for them to go off. The individuals got sick. There's no other reason for them to get sick. And medical tests, my own medical tests, confirm, absolutely confirm, the sarin and cyclosarin exposures, for which I had been notified directly by the Deputy Secretary of Defense by name in a personal letter that, hey Doug, you got exposed to sarin and cyclosarin because you were downwind from Comasea. But Comasea was only one of over 100 sites that we deliberately blew up after the completion of the ground war from March through the fall of 1991.
Even though the Department of Defense continues to deny the widespread use of chemicals and biologicals during the first Gulf War, Jonathan Tucker of the Monterey Institute of International Studies has demonstrated evidence for the use of chemicals in the Kuwaiti theater of operations. The U.S. intelligence reports show the presence of Iraqi chemical weapons. Military log entries describe the discovery of chemical munitions in Iraqi bunkers during and after the ground war. There are incidents in which troops reported acute, numerous symptoms of toxic chemical exposure. There's credible detections of chemical warfare agents made by Czech, French, and American forces. Chemical warfare agents that were detected by coalition forces during the Gulf War include the nerve agent Tabin, sarin, cyclosarin, and the blister agents sulfur, mustard, and lewisite. To this date, there has been no diagnosis or treatment offered by the Department of Defense or Veterans Administration. Dr. Robert Haley, MD of the University of Texas Southwestern Medical School in Dallas, Texas, has detected damage in the brains of those Gulf War veterans who were near the explosion of Comasea. Those injuries had resulted in not only increased social problems, but also a 90% divorce rate and increased crime rates among those vets who showed damage in the area of the brain that controls judgment. The children of Gulf War veterans have shown increased defects such as Goldenhar syndrome, a missing eye or ear, major organ or digestive deformities, and general failure to thrive. 13 years after the Gulf War, the Department of Defense still calls the Gulf War illness a mystery disease. Either the Pentagon employs the most incompetent researchers and physicians in the world, or the cover-up is by design that these troops are being denied meaningful medical care. We can only conclude that the Department of Defense is waiting for an army to die.
The threat of biological warfare is nothing new to the military, but the Persian Gulf War placed a special emphasis on it. This renewed emphasis caused the Defense Department to look at how it was protecting men and women in uniform from this battlefield threat, this unseen enemy. Staff Sergeant Noah Berg looks at one of those enemies and what is being done to fight it.
The Defense Department says it can be a big threat on the modern battlefield. Anthrax, most commonly associated with livestock. And the type that worries those military leaders most is the type that is inhaled.
Sometimes people refer to as very early stages as something like a common cold. But then the person goes downhill very quickly.
Because of the potential anthrax threat, last year the Defense Department ordered vaccinations. And one of the first in line was Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, Eric Benken. Despite isolated protests, the vast majority of medical experts endorsed the vaccine's use. And despite charges that the so-called Gulf War syndrome and anthrax are connected, Huxell says that's just not true. The Defense Department continues to stress the safety of the anthrax vaccine, and all troops headed for the Persian Gulf receive the inoculation series.
We had all the problems from immunizations. Our team was tasked with to put together the anthrax vaccine program in theater. But we were also ordered, do not record lots, batches, doses, who got them, what their reactions were, when they got them, or how many they got. Direct orders.
There's enough paperwork right now to prove there is a Gulf War illness, and there's certain medicines that control it, and that's all they're doing right now is controlling it for a few.
Staff Sergeant Mark Zeller was a member of Special Operations in the 18th Airborne Corps. He served in the Iraq-Iran War, Desert Shield, and Desert Storm campaigns.
And we're all forced to roll up our sleeves and pull down our pants and get shots in the gluteus and in the tricep muscles of our arms. We all started getting sick, but we didn't think nothing of it because our flight surgeon was telling us that it's hygiene that's getting us. We're all not taking baths every day. It's like maybe once a week or once every 3 days. And that hygiene was supposedly getting the best of us, so we didn't think anything of it after that.
They punched us with all these different vaccines, you know, supposedly to protect us, and knowing that, you know, some of these had never been tested on humans.
My neck bones are degenerating. My lower back's degenerating. No one knows why. They want to go in there and scrape it and biopsy it. I'm like, I don't want to be in a wheelchair afterwards. It's pretty damaging to a guy that used to be in special operations and jumped out of airplanes for a living. So.
The use of vaccines in the military with recruits and servicemen and women is well documented. What is not well known is the relationship between the Department of Defense and pharmaceutical companies who have a vested interest in the widespread use of vaccines, what is contained in the vaccines, and just how many of those vaccines that were given that were in fact experimental. The experimentation of individual military members by the bureaucracy of the military medical establishment crosses all party lines. Military experimental use of vaccines have been conducted during the past 50 years. The senior Bush administration ordered the use of experimental vaccines anthrax and botulinum during the buildup of the first Gulf War. The Clinton administration ordered the experimental use of the tick-borne encephalitis vaccine in Bosnia. Perhaps one of the most devastating executive orders regarding vaccines came under the Clinton administration. Executive Order 13139 essentially orders the use of experimental vaccines and/or drugs at any time without the service member's consent to be given to anyone in the military as long as the President or the Secretary of Defense approves. During the first Gulf War, it was not unusual for a service member ordered to Iraq in 1991 to receive 10 to 17 vaccines in one setting. Thousands of U.S. and coalition military personnel who served in the Persian Gulf War are now seriously incapacitated from unknown causes. One common thread for all military personnel were the vaccines. Many of those who did not deploy became ill also. Unfortunately, the U.S. military medical establishment has continued to conduct on an ongoing basis operations such as Project Badger and that has been referred to as a Manhattan-like project that involved the Tri-Service Vaccine Task Force. Credit for the best vaccine research should go to Gary Matsumoto in his acclaimed book entitled Vaccine A. Matsumoto concludes that the government covertly experimented on troops using squalene, which is an oil-based booster used to make vaccines stronger. Squalene has only been approved for use in experimental AIDS and experimental malaria vaccines. Since a large percentage of U.S. forces tested positive for squalene, It has led many individuals to believe that the anthrax vaccine could have been a primary clinical trial for an AIDS vaccine experiment. What the DOD should have disclosed to the troops is that squalene causes life-threatening diseases such as lupus, crippling arthritis, and multiple sclerosis. On May 11, 1999, at an Air Force briefing held at Dover Air Force Base, Air Force Surgeon General Charles H. Rodman II denied the use of squalene in the anthrax vaccine. He was backed up by Army Colonel Arthur Friedlander. However, 6 weeks later, the FDA identified the presence of squalene in 2 separate vaccine lots. With the reintroduction of the anthrax vaccine prior to the Second Gulf War, up to 50% of Air National Guard pilots resigned rather than take the deadly vaccine. To this date, the Department of Defense continues to give the anthrax vaccine to U.S. military.
The minute you walk into a recruiter's office, the first thing they say is, "Young man, if you do this, you'll be taken care of forever." And in modern day, the 21st century soldier, it includes women. So men and women are promised health care should they become sick from the battlefield. And the fact of the matter is that since Operation Desert Storm concluded, 10 to 11,000 soldiers are dead. 250,000 of us get a check from the Veterans Administration for undiagnosed illnesses, and double that amount have actually gone to the Veterans Administration and entered into study groups known as ionizing radiation study groups and Gulf War depleted uranium study groups. And that's just being used as a guinea pig. So we were abused by the Department of Defense. We got sent to a contaminated battlefield. We came home, we're being studied by the Veterans Administration, and every time we turn around and look for some help, somebody calls us a post-traumatic stress disorder. And that's not appropriate. We're not stressed out, we're sick. We've been contaminated. I do what I do every day because the system hurt me.
Phyllis, you're on the air with Dennis Kine. Go ahead, please.
I just want to take time, Dennis, to thank you so much and be able to say this personally to you. And I want to urge the folks to order your book. And I can't go at the pace that I used to, and I'm so thankful for someone like you to help some of us old-timers.
It hurt me as a soldier and it hurt me as a veteran. And I don't want to see anybody else get hurt. I don't do this because I need to inflict any pain on anybody. I do this because young men and women enter voluntarily into a system to go serve their country, serve their friends, serve their family, and serve their fellow Americans, and they get duped by the recruiter from the very beginning when they're told, if you get injured or become sick, we will take care of you. And for 14 years, I've been a prime example. My family members, my brothers, are prime examples of people who never got cared for.
There's legislation in Congress right now to implement another draft. Every parent needs to decide if they're willing to send their child to be part of a military medical establishment experimentation process, because that's exactly what is going to take place. For the past 50 years, we've been experimenting upon hundreds of thousands of our military. It's incomprehensible the damage that has taken place in the lives of these servicemen and women. And it's not just the servicemen and women, it's their families, their spouses, their children that have been severely affected. It must stop. How will we ever get anyone to join the military knowing that they're going to be exposed to whatever the Department of Defense desires to do with them? Once people are aware of the massive amount of experimentation that takes place in our military, we won't have one. We won't have a group of people that will serve. And for obvious reasons. Because of the Ferris Doctrine, which has blocked any kind of compensation, assistance, or really any accountability from the Department of Defense or the military, our troops are living in some kind of slippery slope. They have no rights. With Executive Order 13139, they can be experimented upon without their consent, anytime, any place. When will it stop? How will it stop? And what must we do?
One of the, I think, problems with American law is that there is
a number of ways that municipalities, states, and the federal government will often immunize themselves from what would normally be seen as tort actions. In the United States, we have something called the Ferris Doctrine, which essentially articulates a rule of sovereign immunity that says the federal government is not liable for anything that happens to you while you are in military service. The doctrine originates from the year 1950, and the court at that time heard the case of a military serviceman who was killed in a barracks fire, and ultimately decided that it was good public policy not to allow these lawsuits.
This really is the ultimate in hypocrisy. You see the heroic search and rescue missions where the government is very publicly going in and rescuing prisoners of war in combat, and the message there, or the propaganda if you will, is that we care about you, the soldier. The reality is very different. The reality is that they are shielding themselves behind an outdated legislation and using the soldiers essentially as pawns in a chess game.
The Ferris case was literally about a serviceman who was injured in a barracks fire in New York State. That's a very different kind of case than the subsequent cases that have been brought to the Supreme Court. A case like depleted uranium or Agent Orange or something like the Tuskegee experiment. This is about the government knowingly allowing you to be injured. Some would argue intentionally allowing it to happen, certainly behaving through gross negligence to allow you to suffer injury to yourself. And the courts have consistently, for the last 5 decades, upheld this as a legal doctrine that is alive and well in this country. Now, recently, in the late 1980s, ironically, one of the most conservative justices, Justice Scalia, has indicated in a decision where he was joined by 3 other justices that the Ferris Doctrine was wrongly decided. And so there's some hope that the court is starting to see that a doctrine that began over the principle of negligence ought not be applied when you get into really criminal knowledge.
BeyondTreason.com will be a focal point, an area where people can go to find out what can be done, what needs to be done, and how to help. We must all join together to say, enough is enough. You see, if they experiment upon the military, the citizens are next. We can no longer play the role of esprit de corps in the military, of patriotism, of blind patriotism. We must accept the fact that it is our fault that we have allowed this to take place in this country. We call ourselves Americans, and this is freedom, and yet our sons and daughters are dying. Those that are responsible for these acts should spend the rest of their natural lives in prison for what they have done. There is no question, from the presidents on down for the past 50 years, those that have been in charge of these experiments, there is no question that this is truly beyond treason.